Since we're in this mode of siblings turning around and calling out other siblings, multiple people have sent me this video, and I know it bums people out, but I have a retort to the point that's being made here. So I'm going to try and not make this about Jimmy Dore and his problems, but I'm going to make it against the argument. Why would I not push back against this? One of the most exciting, electric, competent politicians that we have on the left, who more importantly has been organizing, has been creating caucuses before she's even elected, right? Going around and creating solidarity amongst those people in the Democratic Party who are to the left of where the mainstream of the Democratic Party is, and building solidarity, helping people getting elected, promoting, raising money, promoting ideas.
Corporate.
Now, I'm not saying that these people are that Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez is above criticism. No, we should always critique our politicians, but we should do so based upon the votes and the issues that they promote, and give them space to create power for themselves. And look, if AOC came out and said, let's say in the context of Palestinian rights, like, I don't believe that Palestinians deserve any rights, I would have a problem with that. And I would say that.
And we have been trying to hold her accountable on some of these issues.
Of course.
But in a nice way.
Well, it's not just in a nice way. It's in a way that is productive, right? Because the whole point is not so that we like her. The whole point is so that we get a government that functions in a way that we want.
She has the power and the base to do what she set out to do.
That's the point of politics. The point of politics is not for all of us to sit here and feel good about who we support or what. It's nice when that happens, but that's not the point of this. That's the point of junior high school. To have your clique be your clique. So
that's
with that in mind,
subtitle of our show.
Yeah.
Have your clique be your clique.
Exactly.
On the Majority Report.
Here is Jimmy Dore bringing up what is one of the most ridiculous, ill-informed. Play the video.
And I said Cynthia Nixon, who called him a liar on the debate, quit lying, she told him. And now I wonder if she's going to is she going to tell all the progressives to vote for the Democrats' version of Trump, which is Andrew Cuomo?
Pause it. And so the question is Cynthia Nixon going to tell Democrats to vote for Andrew Cuomo? I don't know if she is. I think she's going to stay on the WFP line, the Working Families Party line, because they need 50,000 votes to make sure that they maintain their line position. But nevertheless, continue.
And nobody can expect her to do that. But watch this. You think it's even worse than that? You guys ready for this? Watch this.
What I also look forward to moving forward is us rallying behind all Democratic nominees, including the governor, to make sure that he wins in November.
She's a Democrat, so she has to tell everybody that Andrew Cuomo is the answer.
Pause it. In addition to her not telling everybody that Andrew Cuomo is the answer, what she's telling people is that Andrew Cuomo will be better than the Republican.
She endorsed Cynthia Nixon.
Of course. But there's only two choices on the ballot, folks, of anybody who's going to win. It's either the Republican or the Democrat in this governor's race. I don't know if there's a third or fourth party people, but I got news for you. They're not going to win. 1 million Democrats out of the 1.5 that cast votes for governor voted for Andrew Cuomo. She doesn't have to do anything. She will not lose her position. She will not lose her candidacy if she says, and people should not vote for Cuomo. They should vote for the Republican, or they should vote for someone else and split the votes. You know what would happen if she does that? She can do it, but it would cut into her ability to actually do real things for real people. Not people who want to sit around, feel good about themselves, and that's the agenda. Her agenda is not to make people feel good about themselves. Her agenda is to get specific issues passed through Congress so that they are executed and the American people enjoys them. And there is no theory whatsoever, certainly doesn't come from this video, but I challenge anybody to give me a theory that shows how AOC can achieve more progressive change by coming out and saying at this point, in the lead up to the general election, don't vote for the Democrat at the top of the ticket.
Also, she said this in response to a question about it. Like, she's not out there campaigning with him at every step.
I think
course
it's
not.
really important to remember that Andrew Cuomo is our savior. He's the greatest politician, arguably, of the 21st
She said
century.
even Cuomo, right? In
Right.
that clip.
Yeah, even Cuomo is amazing. Exactly. Because I'm a Democrat now. And
All right, just play
therefore
it back and then
corporate chill.
listen to more.
Nominees, including the governor, to make sure that he wins in November.
Yes, including the governor.
She's a Democrat, so she has to tell everybody that Andrew Cuomo is the answer. Do you see what the problem is with progressives trying to take over the Democratic Party? Do you see the problem?
Yes, I see one of the problems, that they are given no room to do even platitudes, to do even the most basic hitting and bunting in terms of building their own political base. Like making an enemy, a public enemy of Andrew Cuomo, helps progressives get Medicare for all. How? Making an enemy of Andrew Cuomo, this is after she already endorsed Cynthia Nixon in the primary. But going out and saying you prefer a Republican to win than a Democrat. Now, there's two options. One, she has no ability to make that happen. Or two, she does have an ability to make that happen by coming out, right? If she makes that happen and there's a Republican in the governorship of New York State, how is that helpful to getting any of the proposals that we are hoping for come to fruition?
New
Any of them.
Yorkers that
Any
don't
of
have
them.
health care will wake up.
Any of them.
They'll wake up, Sam. They'll
We're
wake
looking
up.
at New York now with an opportunity, largely in part because of her, to actually have a Democratic state Senate and a Democratic state assembly. And they need a governor who will sign these things. Andrew Cuomo will not sign them in the way that Cynthia Nixon would have, but he's going to sign them a lot better than a Republican would.
You know what else also really stands out to me about this is, let's even indulge in a fantasy scenario that somehow.
All right, well, let me finish my point.
Sorry,
here.
go ahead.
So the other thing is that AOC cannot influence the outcome of the election. That she just says, don't vote for Andrew Cuomo, and alienates the 1 million people who voted for Andrew Cuomo in the primary, never mind the other millions. Now, no one has talked about what a bigger crap stain Andrew Cuomo is in New York State over the past 7 years than I have. I challenge anybody who is not active in New York politics, who doesn't do that, like on any medium, who has maligned Andrew Cuomo with very good reason, more than I. But the fact of the matter is, he's better than a Republican. Even the Republicans understand this dynamic. We just need someone to sign it, to sign the legislation, particularly now. And the idea that she has no ability to influence the outcome, it's all signaling. That's what is wanted here. Billy said that Jenny's one of the cool kids, and she's not. And so now I don't like Billy.
Exactly.
Well, I'm looking at the Nixon Cuomo results, and Brooklyn went for Cuomo. So, like, her constituents, a lot of them voted for Cuomo. So if she starts going on just bomb throwing, like,
But
Jimmy
what's the
Dore
value
did-
of it? Like,
Well,
what's
that's actually
what's the
that's
point?
another thing that always
like, it's
misses in this analysis is actually that, and sometimes you see it with some people who follow characters like this on social media. They do start to attack essentially the Democratic base, because the thing that is inconvenient for this analysis is a lot of normal, regular, everyday Democratic voters who are going to need to be your allies, even in your greatest fantasy scenario of a third party, vote for people like Andrew Cuomo. And to basically just say that they're all just sheep or morons, or their perspective should be dismissed, is actually the much more toxic subtext. Because even on the low level, like, whatever, take your whack at AOC, sure, maybe you're upset at her for whatever. But the larger message of, well, it's obviously all these mouth-breathing idiots that voted for Cuomo or are excited about Andrew Gillum. What are you saying about whole swaths of people you need to engage with and respect? It's pretty disgusting.
It's vote shaming from another angle.
Well, it's who is, I mean, well, look, I don't think there's anything wrong with vote shaming. The issue is, the issue is, what is going to empower this politician who has an agenda that you subscribe to? What is going to empower her? If Andrew Cuomo runs for president, is it going to be more powerful that she said, I voted for him as governor over a Republican, but he should not be our nominee, than vice versa? I mean, these are all basic, these are just like basic, rudimentary. This is about power. This is about how you get what, you fulfill agendas, not about, I don't like you because you said a nice thing about something. And it's not even saying a nice thing about it. It's saying, I think a Democrat is better than a Republican. And if someone wants to debate that, I'll have a debate with anybody on the left about that. And I will debate anybody who articulates a perspective that's different from that. But continue with it.
Yeah, there's more.
Oh, yeah.
A, it's never going to happen. And B, they get co-opted.
She's co-opted.
Let me, I don't know. Am I making too much out of this stuff?
Yes.
That was hard to listen to. I mean, that 10 seconds was hard to hear. It really was.
Really? You couldn't just wait a month? You couldn't wait until maybe November 1st to
All right, pause it. Now, let me explain why you wouldn't wait till November 10th to do this. Because if you're going to do it, you do it at a time. Well, first of all, she was probably asked the question, but you're going to do it at a time where it doesn't make you look like you're a Johnny-come-lately. You just do it because that's where one of the sources of your power comes from, the Democratic Party. And she's trying to leverage that power to do good things. So if you're going to do it, you do it early. Because if you're going to do it and you know you're going to do it, you do it early. And the idea that AOC can leverage anything from Andrew Cuomo at this point is moronic.
Support behind this guy.
Why? What's the difference? What's the difference? What's the difference? Well, no, I'm asking you.
Well, for me, it's like, why do people have to keep endorsing these Democrats that are corporate tools? Why does she have to hurry up?
I'm asking what's the difference between now and November 1st?
Well, I was hoping that she would push him without giving support.
So this is exactly right, Steph. She got nothing for this. Like Cynthia Nixon, like some people were saying, well, maybe Cynthia Nixon will get Andrew Cuomo to admit or to agree to sign on a single payer if it gets passed, and then she'll endorse him. Or maybe she'll get something and then nothing. They got nothing from Andrew Cuomo. Nothing.
Okay. Trying to get in the general election for AOC, trying to get something from Andrew Cuomo at this point would be like pushing a rope.
We're here to talk about today.
We are here to talk about sunscreen, specifically U.S. sunscreen, and how to fix it. Hello, everyone. This is Rep AOC, and I'm here with Charlotte Palomino.
I'm a brand owner, but also a licensed esthetician. U.S. sunscreen regulations are not necessarily making us more safe or better products.
U.S. sunscreens are far behind the rest of the world. I was in South Korea earlier this year, and it is so clear how far advanced the rest of the world is on sunscreen, and we deserve better here in the US.
How does the FDA regulate?
FDA is different than the rest of the world in that we regulate sunscreen as a drug instead of a cosmetic. It's regulated as a drug, has far more stringent standards, far more testing, far more scientific and clinical trials that are required, which is good. We want to make sure that things are safe. However, sometimes that can add a lot of bureaucratic and costs that prevent us from getting any sunscreen filters at all.
And just for context, it has been since 1999. It was the last time that we had a new sunscreen filter in the United States.
When we compare the US standards to European standards in 2017, a Sloan Kettering study found that only half of US sunscreens met European protection standards. Here's the thing though, there is something that we can do about this. Congress has not been very aware of this issue, which is why there hasn't been a lot of momentum behind this issue. Truly, it's not too corny. Please contact your member of Congress, especially if your member of Congress sits on the Energy and Commerce Committee. They have jurisdiction over the FDA. However, any member of Congress can develop attention and draw attention to this issue. Ask them to break through some of the regulatory barriers at the FDA and fund public research so that we can all enjoy the filters that develop out of the scientific process.
Just need to make some noise about it.
Totally. I mean, I love Korean sunscreens, but I want to buy this in the US. Why do we need to import them from all over the place?
Welcome to a special edition of RBN Live Saturdays. I'm one of your hosts. I'm CJ, but I'm joined today by one of my special guest hosts or co-hosts, Michelle. How you doing, Michelle?
I'm doing okay. Thank you for having me and for extending the invite. Other than talking about AOC makes my stomach churn, but yeah, we're good.
So I thought with the topics, what I did differently, or I'm starting to do different, is I go to the topics and then I go, you know what, who would be good to talk about these specific topics? That's why I reached out to you about these specific topics. So maybe that feeling you get about AOC is going to provide for a great discussion. And we also are going to have Professor Anthony Zunkus is going to be joining in about 20 minutes, about 45 after the hour. So he'll be joining us soon and we'll pop him in as soon as we can. And the reason I wanted to show Michelle, and we had a question actually, or a observation. Somebody said, what's the purpose of us watching this Sam Cedar clip? I wanted to show the contrast. I wanted to show what he was saying AOC was and what she was trying to do. And then I wanted to show the most recent video footage we have of AOC, and that is the promotion or the advocacy of opening up the U.S. market to sunscreen, or open up the sunscreen market in the U.S. So I thought it was the clearest way to illustrate there is no way to sort of defend what she's doing at this point. Like
right.
Before, you saw this more often, Michelle, where people were like what Sam did here, where, you know, he just kind of saying, and another reason I picked this video is because it aged very badly. And we know what happened with Andrew Cuomo and they're advocating for her to endorse Andrew Cuomo. But what say you as far as the difference in what they're saying in the sort of the pre-live video versus this intro video we had of AOC promoting the sunscreen? What do you see?
Well, the first question I have is, did she recently invest in a sunscreen company that she wants to advance her product? Be a beauty industry thing, you know, which is where I tend to go with a lot of electeds these days, because they get into office, not really necessarily in my experience to support us, even though sometimes we benefit from that. However, they get into office to make their mark and to make their name.
Right.
And then they age there for years and years and years, majorly disconnected from us and what we want and what we need. You know, even the regulatory process is kind of like, and who's greasing that wheel, you know, because it's often the bigger business, the bigger industry, corporation doing all of that. But I had problems with AOC when she was elected because I was already on my radical bend of, you know,
Oh, right on.
Democrats are horrible. And I had interns where I was working that would come in all googly eyes about AOC. And I'm like going, okay, so what good has she done? What good does she really plan to do? And how is it not being controlled by the Democratic Party to start with?
Those are all great questions that I think if we haven't gotten the answers that we have gotten to those questions have not fared well for the squad or AOC or progressive or elected progressives or their defenders into bringing up or speaking to what Sam was talking about. He's basically was trying to defend her as she's strategizing. She's trying to strategize in order to gain power to do what exactly, I'm not sure, but that is what they say. And I would just, I would like to know, that was a few years ago, I think, that video. We can now say, okay, Sam, you said that then. Now we've seen 2 years go by and we've seen the breaking of a rail strike. I would say that's one of the bigger things they did, voting of all the packages to Ukraine. The protests we've seen of her. I mean, we've just seen just thing after thing or scenario after scenario surrounding her. And it has not been a positive. So it feels like this is one of the final nails in the coffin of like the complete collapse of the idea of AOC. Because if you think about what the idea of AOC, she supposedly represented the different progressive Democrat, the one that was going to fight hard and tooth and nail, fighting even against their own Democratic leadership. That was the whole idea that was everybody sold on. Why Nick from RBN, one of the RBN brother Nick, was even volunteering. He quit his job and volunteered for a campaign like this with the Bernie Sanders campaign. So, but you go from that to go to some of the things, it's just a complete sort of fall. And had you ever been a believer in AOC at any point? So let's go back to when she, was on the Glenn Greenwald show and saying no about the speaker. I'm not going to vote for the speaker. I'm talking about, so nothing has happened after that. We just know this about her.
It goes further back than that for me. When she was running for office, it was like, oh, this is a breath of fresh air, right? And that was when I may have had a glimmer of hope of maybe, and I also had a glimmer of hope about DSA or, the Democratic Socialists and all of this other stuff. But
anything new that could be something good, you obviously would have an initial reaction of, I hope, you're hoping that it's good. The People's Party had the same reaction where it was like, I hope this is it. But, but go ahead. Sorry to interrupt.
No, it's okay. Even with like the Green Party, there are struggles within the Green Party that actually go back to the structural variables that we all deal with in the US government. This government was founded, this country was founded with some very problematic and oppressive forces in play. Ownership was prioritized, expertise is prioritized. And then, with AOC, we get into this thing of comfort. And I think comfort is one of the largest disconnects that happen because we don't realize when we're comfortable what we're not seeing in society. So I've likened it recently to a rubber band. It's like you can be pushing for change, but if you still have a house to go home to, if you have food regularly on your table, if you don't have to worry about where your next meal or rent payment is coming from, you rubber band back to this place of absolute, you don't have to see all that stuff. And that the longer you stay in the space of, I don't have to see the oppressions that are happening, the more disconnected you become from that experience of the oppression.
Yes.
Which is why, you know, I advocate a lot for those most impacted and most at risk have to be leading the charge. But
Yes.
I've grappled with this recently too, of how do you become a part of the system without incorporating the system into your belief structure just because of that comfort alone, of not realizing that you're eating a steady diet of progressive, you know, this is good, we fight for the workers. No, you're not. You know, and until people stop seeing these structural, you know, when you stop seeing the oppression that's happening is, I think, the point where you have to kind of remember, no, the struggle is real, and we have to remember that struggle. If you're gaining resource and power, no matter what you give to charity doesn't help people. Charity just funds the charity movement. So I'm a
Right.
little cynical about all of this these days, which may be good, maybe not good, but you know, different groups organize, even you guys organize in a container that is, I mean, we live 24/7 in capitalism, American
Right.
imperialism, white supremacy, culture, you know, all of these other things. We have to use the tools of the devil, of the oppressor, in order to get ahead. So how do we also stay grounded though? And I see you guys doing this with your mutual aid efforts, with giving back to the community, that you're still staying embedded and rooted in those communities. And as soon as you unroot yourself from those communities, you're an unchecked oppressor in many ways. No matter how good your intentions are in your heart, you're going to steer yourself and everything else in a direction that just isn't going to be helpful to everybody, to those most impacted and most at risk.
I think that's a very good point. And I think that's what sets RBN apart, that we try to stay connected to the community as to remain focused, because it's easy to lose focus if you're not unhoused, for example. If it's easy to lose that focus about that. It's easy if you're not immersed in it, like as you were speaking to earlier. I don't know how to do it, but let me bring the video back up here. And the reason I want to do that is because it's not necessarily the sunscreen. You notice the critique, and I'm going to show a couple of tweets. The critique, no one's saying sunscreen is the problem, that you promoting the actual product is the problem. We are saying, or the critique is, you have time to do this when you're lacking in so much of the other areas where you actually have been elected to do a job. You're lacking so much in that area, but you're doing this. So it seems like an unfocused person. It seems like if a person is a firefighter, and they're constantly missing when it's time to go fight a fire, but you know, I don't know, they're down the street trying to sell, you know, foot insole pads so you can walk comfortably. Like, you know what I mean? Like, is that going to help somebody? Yes, I guess. I mean, that'll help somebody that needs that. But is that what we want a firefighter doing? Is that what a firefighter is supposed to be doing?
And it
It'll be
also
fine
gets,
if you were not absent at the fires, you know what I mean? But you're absent at the fires, AOC. You're absent at the fight. So go ahead, Michelle.
I was going to bring up too, it also still avoids the root cause of skin cancer, which is our diets in the United States.
Yeah.
No matter how much gunk we put on our body, when we're not able to feed ourselves in a way that is chemical free and whole foods, you know, we are set up to have skin cancer. There were studies done on this, and I don't have access to it right now, but this is a money-making scheme. This is a booming industry that she's supporting, not to improve anything really, because, you know, I don't see that industry being able to improve much, when her focus shouldn't be on the money-making and the cosmetic element of things, but rather on ensuring everybody has healthy food to fight off the cancers of our body that are coming because our diet, you know, most of our foods in the United States don't meet the qualifications in other countries either. You know, if you compare an ingredient list of McDonald's in the United States to even McDonald's in the UK, McDonald's in the UK has mostly whole foods in what they're putting forward, where we have soy and other meat additives and fake stuff and everything else. So sunscreen alone is not really the focal point. And the fact that she's focusing on that focal point makes everything go sideways.
Yeah, and I think and this is to the point you were making earlier, it's a focus on that point because there must be some sort of profit motive somewhere. There has to be in my mind, it has to be some sort of profit motive somewhere. And I don't know, it just it doesn't, I don't know, it just doesn't, it's not a good look to me for a progressive lawmaker, to me. Not when so much hasn't been accomplished, not when so much of the plan of the progressive policy has not been realized. To me, it's just not a good look for all those reasons. The same reasons, a lot of the reasons we said about the Met Gala when she attended the Met Gala. I'm just gonna pop up a couple of headlines. We can talk as the headlines are up though. But the same sort of thing when it how do I get this down? We've updated our terms. Continue. Okay, there goes one here. Already got ad blocked. Ad blocked. But you can see it at the top there. U.S. sunscreen is stuck in the 90s. Is this a good job? It was a picture of AOC, but I'll bring up some other ones where I'm not ad blocked here, and then I'll read one of them, just a couple snippets before we close this initial which one am I looking for? This one is Yahoo, so it should be good. This initial segment. This one says AOC slams the FDA's harmful overregulation of sunscreen. So here's where she's being used, whether knowingly or unknowingly, by the capitalist class who doesn't want regulation on anything, and they're using this to take advantage to say, see, there's a progressive also who doesn't want all this crazy regulation on things, you see. So she's even being allowed or being used in this way, as you can see here in this headline. So that's just another sort of unintended consequence, I guess. I think I have one more. Yeah, I got one more to show, and then we'll read one of these before we close out this segment. Okay, harmful. I guess it's this one. And this one is Allure magazine, which is a more of a, I think it's beauty. I think it would be labeled beauty magazine, Allure. Yeah, so Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez thinks you deserve better sunscreen, and then it just goes into that. It's you know, it's just one of them things like, it's like, I mean, it's not crazy a big of a deal, but it is just another opportunity to point out priorities, you know, like priorities basically. So let me read a little bit of, I do want to go back and read some of the Yahoo one because of the way they describe it. I want to see what their perspective is on this here. And this one's this is written by Robbie Suave from The Hill. Oh, I didn't even notice that when I got it. So if you see here, Robbie, this is from The Hill, Robbie. Robbie, I'm sorry, wrote this. Oh, okay. So interesting. Did not know that, but I guess now we can and Aaron, I know you're watching this, you can put him on the thumbnail. Robbie for this. So credit where credit is due. AOC, and I'll just, abbreviate her name. AOC may be a self-described democratic socialist, but when it comes to Food and Drug Administration's overregulation of sunscreen, a non-trivial issue, she sounds a lot like a libertarian. He's saying this is a non-trivial. That means this is an important issue, but I'm curious why he uses that. So isn't it what that means? Non-trivial means it is important.
Yeah, it's and I think that some of this comes from whether you're focusing on the sunscreen or the FDA quote unquote overregulation of,
right,
which again you're connecting it. And this is where reading comprehension becomes kind of important, because you could read it and go, oh, he's saying this is an important issue. But no, what he's saying is not necessarily the sunscreen, but the overregulation is the non-trivial issue.
Right. Which is what I was trying to say, which you said a lot better. Yeah, you said a lot better. So thank you for that. So great. Where was I here? Oh, right here. In a recent TikTok video, and I'm assuming it's the one we just watched, AOC interviewed esthetician, I always say that kind of weird, esthetician Charlotte Palermino about the abysmal limited sunscreen options in the United States. Quote, U.S. sunscreen regulations are not necessarily making us more safer, explains Palermino, and AOC agrees. U.S. sunscreens are far behind the rest of the world, and our regulations aren't necessarily making our sunscreens better or safer, but it doesn't have to be this way. And then there's a picture. They're going to show the video we had here in a second here. And this is Rep AOC. AOC is calling out a very real problem. Sunscreen is regulated like a drug, which means the product is subject to, I don't know what that means.
Byzantine.
Do you know what that is?
Yeah. I think that's an era, but I'm not 100% sure. It's a really odd word to use,
Okay. I'll look it up in the background, everybody, and now I'll bring it up in a second. FDA regulations that have largely thwarted the innovation in the category for the last 20 years. So basically, this could be also true, where yes, this is a sign of AOC literally not being the person we elected her to be. At the same time, this is an issue that could be looked at. Not necessarily the top of priority, maybe not even a top 100. And that also can be true. As the economist Alex Tarbarek has pointed out, European and Asian countries enjoy vastly superior options. And here's a quote from him. Sunscreens in Europe and Asia are better than in the United States because more ingredients are allowed, and these create more effective and more pleasing sunscreens, end quote. He writes, this is no accident, but rather the deliberate result of regulatory policy. The European Union, that is, for instance, has approved 27 different compounds for use in sunscreens, whereas the FDA has only approved 17, so a difference of 20. And I think we can sort of cut this article here. We don't need to go too far, because I do want to give the issue its just due. I mean, if it is a real issue that the FDA changing the way this is regulated in the same way of cannabis, for example, how it's scheduled, and that should be also changed, in my opinion. So I want to give it its just due, but the critique of AOC still stands. Is that she can be doing a whole lot. Like if she has free time like this, she can be doing a whole lot more in the advocacy of Medicare for all, for example. Like, has she held one rally? Has she gathered one call to action call, even not even a physical rally, just say virtual, a call to action call, everybody nationwide, a couple of calls to advocate or to plan for some sort of action for Medicare for all? No. So that's still the critique that I have for this. But any final words on either the overregulation that Robbie, and I think Robbie, and let's point out, Robbie is a libertarian. So he is zeroing in on the overregulation part because he's a libertarian, which is understandable. That's like their number one thing is, as far as one of their number one things in critiquing is the overregulation. They want to just live and let live. Typically, libertarians believe that. So he is going after that particular point. But what do you say as a final sort of closing comment to this topic, whatever part you want to comment on?
I think ultimately it's about following the money with this. Why is she endorsing an industry that is expected to grow like by, I think 20% is what I found on a stat. But this industry is going to expand, and it's already $1 billion industry, and it's going to expand by billions of dollars. So why? And of what purpose? Because I can't connect it to health of the nation, because sunscreen alone is not going to improve the health of all of us. So with that, it's more about her securing her future, her finding her pathway, her becoming, I don't know if it's Nancy Pelosi or Dianne Feinstein, that track of replacing that person. And I'm sorry, that person would be something else to kind of put up as an image of the sunscreen need in the industry, because she doesn't look very healthy. Neither one of them, they're both too old and everything else. But it's about looking at the layers and really asking a lot of why. And we just have to continue to ask the whys.
Yeah, and I'm sorry, everybody. I did promise that I would show a couple of tweets. So let's show a couple of tweets of this, because this actually went viral. This is how I even knew about this. Typically on Fridays is when I'm online the least. That's when I try to get a lot of family errands done, because I like to have my Saturdays and Sundays free. So I try to get a bunch of stuff done. So I was doing that yesterday. But I did notice this kept popping up in my feed. So let's go over a couple of responses here. And I'm going to toss them up to show just the reaction. And a lot of them are sarcastic, as you'll see. Here's one from Carl Zah, and Carl Zah has been on a couple of our summits. I know he was on the General Strike. No, Anti-Imperialist Summit. He was on a panel with PJ Vassad, I think. And then he was on our last summit. This last summit, we just had a panel with Shama Sawant. Carl Zah was on there. And he says, "Thank you, AOC, for tackling the most pressing issue facing America." And obviously, Michelle, that's some sarcasm there.
Right, exactly.
Which, I mean, it's funny. It's funny. This is not something to really go hard at or add as far as your critique. It is good to use sarcasm in this situation. Here is more of a person, a fan of AOC. I thought it would be good to include at least a couple of their comments also. This is Walker Bragman. And if you remember, I believe, no, you know what? I don't want to say that just in case my memory is not correct. A quote, "Leading Democratic Socialist congressman advocates for deregulation," end quote, "is not something I had on my 2023 bingo card." So it's completely something even shocking. I guess I would say to the AOC camp, it's something that's shocking. They didn't, surprising that they didn't know she will be doing also. So that's interesting. And then we have a couple of others. I'll just read more rapidly. This one is from Alley Oop. Medicare for all. This is so brave. She's really fighting for us now. Jesus freaking Christ. So thank you for that comment. Here's another one. Dirtbag left one. Holy shiznit, I'll say it that way. When I saw this, I thought for sure it was a AOC parody account. Then watching the video, I thought they found a great impressionist or used an AI. Nope. This is real. And I think some other people had the same reaction. Is this your first time hearing about this video during this stream, Michelle?
No, it's not. I had caught glimpses of it. There's an element of disability within this that is just, that worry about the cosmetic while not supporting all these other needs that are underneath it. People with skin cancer, if they're on public benefits, they don't get the best of services. They don't get the highest quality of health care. They don't get the solutions to those problems. And so that's where I saw it was flagged more as a disability issue. So,
yeah, and that's a great point to add. And I think a lot of people I think this comment right here is making that point too. I think that's. Let me see if I get that right. Over 600,000 people sleeping on the streets. So to your point, like there's so many other issues that if you have the time for this, that could use your advocacy in this way. Like, when's the last time she's been on with a doctor or a person who lost a loved one, that if they had medical insurance, why isn't she touring the country with victims of our terrible medical system? In this way, we're doing these videos, and she can call it AOC Tours America for healthcare for all. That's a great slogan.
Yep.
But what can you do? Let's continue. Here, this one's from Eric Clapel. I think that's how you say it. Living wage, strike 1. Healthcare, strike 2. Climate policy, strike 3. Survey says skincare. We get skincare. More sarcasm. And here's one from Ryan Knight. You went from pretending to care about Medicare for all to hawking sunscreen. Same critique we have. And here goes Nick. Nick also thought this was a parody account, or makes the point. Is this a parody account? I thought it was because I saw it without the sound first. So I'm scrolling through my feed and I see. So just imagine you see AOC, and I'm gonna rewind it here so you can see what I saw here in the beginning, and I'll make this big. But I'm gonna turn the sound off. See how I thought this was some sort of joke she was doing when I saw it, because just think of the body language you're seeing here, how she gets close to the camera too. So I was like, oh, this must be some sort of funny thing. That's why I didn't even think to even turn the sound on. I was like, oh, I'm not even interested in
that might be
this
a fun
funny little sketch.
It might be a fun video to actually make a parody of for those reasons. How about, we deal with the homeless on the street,
yeah. Somebody watching, please do this. I know somebody watching right now is an editor. STF or Shut the Fuck Up Joe, if you're watching, somebody do something, an edit of this where it's the sound, and you can insert whatever you want. Have her selling whatever you want. It would be great. So if somebody could do that to this video, tag RBN and we will definitely promote it and play it in a couple of our streams. I'll even start it as an intro video if you do that. So that's the challenge to somebody watching this. So that's a great idea. I forgot what I was doing here.
Sorry, I keep kind of throwing you off, I think.
No, that's good though, because that's good. We want to be able to have a natural flow of the conversation here. But anyway, to get back to kind of close out the segment. Oh, we were just reading comments. So yeah, so those comments were the more popular ones that I saw, and they happened to be people that I knew. What we were doing, I just remember now, we were looking at what she was doing without the sound, and you see what I mean, how it looks like some sort of like sketch. It doesn't look like she's talking about anything serious. And that's how I initially came upon the video.
Why?
Before I knew that it was a viral video, or maybe I should say in a different way, before it went viral. That's how I saw it. But anyway, let's go through a couple of comments, and then we shall move to our next story. Professor said he's running late, so he shall be here whenever he can get here. Let's see here. AOC is a politics model. Her skin is important. Oh, that's more sarcasm. I guess I'm assuming that's sarcasm. Here's one. Also, AOC steals working class people's money. That is also true. Here's a funny. Is this funny? Blue MAGA wine moms love the squad and AOC. I didn't know that. I mean, because I guess there has to be some sort of constituency that still sort of vibes with them, or who have not yet seen sort of their lack of fighting as a betrayal. Like, certain people that are more in the middle who may not want Medicare for all. So the lack of them not advocating for it is not a betrayal to them. So I guess there is a group like that. Yeah. So, excuse me. Great point. AOC equals another obvious corporatist. That's a get. Here goes the name I was looking for. Tomcat Don needs to tackle this one. Yes, Tomcat. I'm sorry, Turncat. I said that. Yeah, Turncoat. I'm sorry. Said it wrong twice. Turncoat Don is the one I was thinking of earlier. I was trying to remember as another person that does those videos. This stuff is poisoning our water while it makes your skin nice and soft. I did not know that about sunscreen.
Yeah.
Sunscreen has a negative it has a negative effect. Oh, I did not know that. Again, I don't buy much sunscreen.
And his comment just reminded me too. It is a part of the petroleum industry. Sunscreen is connected to the petroleum industry. I can't remember the exact connection, but it is connected in some way to that, I believe. So that's an interesting. It's horrible when we unpack the supposedly simple issues, how complex they actually are.
Yeah. Oh, well, petroleum is in sunscreen because you can buy some without it. It says petroleum free sunscreen. So petroleum is in sunscreen. So that's one of the ingredients, I guess, that helps. In it, I guess, I'm not a scientist in particular on this particular subject. And Anthony isn't in back. He's getting ready, so we'll bring him up in a second. But let's go through maybe 2 more comments, and then we'll get over to the next subject here. See if I'm trying to stay on topic here. Let's take one from Facebook. Here goes one. Comfy cozy, I got mine. Love AOC because of nothing will change. And the system worked just fine for them, but they can fake pretending to care for the poor by voting blue as their virtues, or they virtue signal, maybe is what it is here. So, Professor, just give me the thumbs up whenever you are ready. Okay, so I'll bring you in at the beginning of this next topic then. So let's bring Professor in, and I'll just introduce you like I would introduce a regular friend. So here is Anthony. What's up, Anthony? How you doing?
I'm doing great. Nice to see you, Jay, and hello, Michelle.
Hello,
Yes.
nice
Have
to
you two
see
been
you.
have you two been on camera or on before?
Together? I don't know. I've never met Michelle Pfeiffer before, so I'm excited.
Well, Pfeffer, not Pfeiffer. No
Oh,
I in
Pfeffer.
Pfeffer,
Well, I'm
but
excited
that's
to meet
okay.
Michelle Pfeffer too.
That's my Twitter handle. But I think we may have been back in the third party summit. There may have been one section we were in transition on.
Gotcha.
Okay.
But it would have
I was
been
just gonna
just
point to that.
that transition period, so it was very short, if at all.
Right.
But yeah, I followed your work. I appreciate it greatly, though. Yeah, what you talk about,
Thank you.
what you bring up.
Thank you so much.
Yeah. And now that before we get to the next topic, since I introduced both of you sort of just as, regular friends, because I do consider you regular friends, let's talk about who you actually are, some of the things that makes you you, and I'll start with you, Michelle. So tell people about who you are more politically, as far as if you're still with the Green Party, if you're still sort of part of them, and any other advocacy groups you're a part of, and but yeah, and you can talk about yourself, and then I'll the professor to do the same.
So I am still a registered Green. I am no longer a Green Party leader. But I am an active advocate and activist for disability rights, disability justice, and overall inclusion and equity of disabled people, because we are the canaries in the coal mine that kind of sound the warnings to the different issues that everybody deals with, but we're often continue to put aside and pushed aside in everything that we do. I am at a point of change and transition in my life, which means I have like a Patreon account. I am, seeking alternative modes of funding as well as I continue to kind of piece together the rest of my life. Because it's an inaccessible world if you're able-bodied, and then when you're disabled, you become, it's just that much harder to kind of forge your way. I'm in the early stages of creating All Things Disability, which will be both an advocacy as well as a consulting firm that will hopefully advance disability equity and go beyond the simple disability rights model and be informed of, by, of, and for those most impacted and those most at risk. So it's kind of me in a nutshell. I'm slowly rolling things out because when you don't have money, it's kind of hard to rub your two nickels together and expect them to create more nickels. But I believe in supporting and amplifying the work of others, and I've appreciated my connections with RBN along that process and through that pathway.
Yeah, and to that point, it feels, and I said this before on a stream. That's my wife, so I'll read that in just a second. I'll say on the stream, it feels like all the people that I know, a lot of you I've met on Twitter and now friends in real life, but it feels like everybody is slowly progressing. It feels like I'm amongst the people who is actually doing action, doing things, and it's slow because we're all in the beginning stages. We talk about this before off camera, Michelle. Like, there's a lot of things that we could need to do to make our content more accessible. We talk about this before off. It's just hard to do. Hard to do that. But it feels like what you're doing, like what you're creating, and then what Comrade Misty is sort of creating with she did a one big rally for Julian Assange, and then others, Afeni, what she's doing. It just everybody is just kind of slowly doing different things to kind of push advocacy, and it's a great thing to see. And I'll bring in you, Professor, if you want to tell people. I mean, you are on here all the time. You were just on here a couple of days ago, so was Michelle not too long ago. So a lot of people know you already. But for those that don't know you, if you would give a short sort of description of what you're about and what you do.
Great. Thank you so much, Compton Jay. It's nice to be here. Oh, no. For those that don't know me, I'm from New York, born and raised. I'm a social worker and an activist, among other things in my life. And I just wanted to make a quick comment. Michelle mentioned disability rights, which listen, living able-bodied, it's not the first thing that comes to mind for me, but I try to make it a point to find out more. I was reading an article the other day about how early voting was not accessible in certain areas for people with differing abilities, and that, it's upsetting to hear that people just assume, oh, everything must be fine, let's just have early voting. And there again, just another example of that layered access. And it's definitely something that needs to be included in our conversations always when we talk about moving forward, especially past this duopoly. I'm a social worker and I teach social work. I teach in the graduate schools of social work at Columbia University and at Adelphi University in New York. And my specialties are human behavior and trauma, emotional trauma. And under that umbrella come things like abuse, drug and alcohol substance issues, substance use disorders. And, a while ago, I started seeing connections because, when we first entered the field, we were kind of taught like, these are just defects of character. Like somebody has something wrong with them inside. And that's why they're violent, or that's why they're addicted to cocaine, or whatever it is, that's why they can't hold the job down, whatever the thing was. And social workers would intervene and try to help the people kind of see what's wrong and get them to a place where they can move forward. And I think the thing that was a big opening for me was when I started looking at the science, the research strongly showing that these things that we call defects in character or diseases really aren't, but they're the results of a sick society. And I've maintained things like, people say that addiction is a disease, and it's a nice metaphor, so we take the blame away from someone. But I say if it is a disease, it's not an individual disease, it's a societal disease. Okay. And it manifests in individuals, families, groups, and communities. And so that's kind of my perspective. And when we pull the lens out, it's really the way that we interact with each other, the way our society, our social and economic systems are set up, that causes this like alienation of people from the group, which really causes a lot of what we see as aberrant behavior, mental illness, addiction, and things like that. So kind of that's my perspective, where I come through, and I just like opportunities to talk about it. And boiling it down to the political movement, I think it's important because we don't feel more and more people are feeling disconnected. Why bother? Nothing ever changes. And I think that's why our presence is to say, well, actually, you do matter. And together we matter more, and we can make changes. I mean, it's the only thing that's going to work right now.
That's a whole nother podcast, CJ, with Anthony and I about these things. So just tag that and flag it for that.
Are you talking about this here? This is what you sent? Is that what you mean? This is for another?
That could be one of the things, but just the whole conversation of alienation and even treatment in our mental health system, that further isolates people. And the consequence of isolation is these social ills, the addictions and things like that. But this was in 2022. I voted remotely, but when I went to the voting precinct, I noticed that they were not set up fully accessible. So that's what this blog is for Anthony. And Alice Wong is an amazing disabled advocate activist that talks a lot about voting accessibility and the importance, how we are getting left out. We are 25% of the American population, and yet we are the largest minority group that is still excluded from voting rights. Whether it's legally or by physical accessibility, by vision, having the machines that are technically, and this becomes a whole slippery slope because those machines that blind people need to vote actually will be fought against by people that say they'll break the sanctity of the vote and they'll corrupt the voting system, So it's like each one of these access needs complicates and with the existing social structures that want to point fingers at things that aren't really essential or important.
Wait, so the argument is that an accessibility, that is an accessibility, giving more accessibility to voting is bad, or does what did they say?
It puts the ethics of the vote, it creates, so think of the scan machines in Florida that were deemed, that the Scantron stuff that you can hack into and stuff, right? So when a person that is blind or low vision needs to vote, they go in, and half the time those machines are broken or they're not working or whatever, or the county or the city or the state has deemed them a block to the count of the vote. All of these issues come together and merge into a whole nother type of oppressive cycle that just makes it harder for disabled people to gain the vote, for us to have our voice heard, for us to have our voice registered. If you can't see and you need to have your worker take your ballot, there are states that have ruled that you cannot give somebody else your ballot anymore. The only way you can vote is if you can hand deliver it to the precinct. So all of these things are barriers. There are some good people that are doing some good advocacy work, but there's also, the systemic issues that complicate it and make it that much more difficult.
Wow, this is a reason why we like to have you on, because these are just issues that if you are not immersed in the community like you are, or you're an avid reader like Professor is, I just simply don't even hear about these stories at all. I don't hear about what's going on unless I have to actually, actively go out. It don't run through my feed or anything like that. So unfortunate. But go ahead if you're going to say something, Professor.
I think you're doing a lot, though. It's not like you're not busy, Jay. It's constantly putting these shows out, and
And
you guys,
you always want to do more, though. You always want to do more.
And I think that's important because after the Labor Summit, I know how intensive putting an event together can be. Not that particular type of event, but you've done quite a few of these. But doing all that, and it's such a service to the community. But I remember being at Occupy in New York, right? And so we were at Zuccotti Park. I was there almost every day. And there were times when, so I'm a social worker. I'm not a professional social worker while I'm there, but I also couldn't help but, listen to some of the stories that people were telling. And, a lot of people were feeling stressed, upset. There was PTSD from the arrests because the NYPD was not gentle when they arrested us. They would purposely put the zip ties on. They did it with Black Lives Matter too, really hard. People would be like screaming in pain. And then after that, I talked to people that had PTSD from their encounters with the police. And one of the things that we started saying was it's important to be able to step up and step back. That sometimes we need to care for ourselves, our family, whatever, and we need to step back. Somebody else steps up. We can't always be on. And, I'm a person that has to remind myself of that too. But it's just important that we take care of ourselves and each other, and we remind each other, hey, it's okay to not do and be everything, because we are in this for the long haul.
Yeah, I think that's important. Oh, there's something here. Let me hang on before I move forward. Make sure.
Just to echo that too, CJ,
Okay.
we've had
Go ahead.
conversations, you and I have had conversations around the overall accessibility of this stream as an example,
Right,
YouTube
exactly.
thankfully does the auto captions, but it's based in the capitalistic structure that we're in. Capitalism locks us in the status quo. And that's something that goes back to the comfort point that I made earlier. If we're not deliberately exposing ourselves to the hardships of everybody, when we don't have hardships ourselves, or when we're overwhelmed because of the hardships we do struggle with and we can't tap in everywhere that we want to tap in, both things create barriers and create attitude struggles and limitations to what we can do. Ultimately, by you and I connecting, by Professor Zenkus and I connecting, by us being in the stream with the people that are here, we make a difference with those people that are present. Not because we don't want to reach the other people that aren't present, that can't be present, but because this is what we need to do in the here and now. And that's important for everybody who focuses on the scarcity to remember that we can overcome scarcity together, but we also need the people to help us overcome that scarcity. And through the people labor, the people connections that we can develop and cultivate, we can and are creating a better world. But it's slow progress, not because of where our hearts are, but because of the barriers that exist in
Constraints,
society.
yeah. Constraints. That is a perfectly said. Let's move to I think I can confirm the three of us are sort of advocates, or at least like the idea of Cornell West running as a Green. I think I've seen all of us say something good and positive direction to that. So I think I can say that. So let's move to this. He goes on the Stephen A. Smith show. And because Stephen A. Smith is a gazillionaire and has tons of thousands of people that watch him, and I'm sure that he probably has some sort of copyright stuff on his show. So I'm gonna play this clip where he doesn't say anything. It's just Dr. Cornell West talking. I think they show him on camera. He might say one word, but we should be pretty good on here. But let's listen to Dr. Cornell West. Actually, let me set this video up a little bit better. I think he says in this video, discusses the critiques of the Obama administration. So let's listen.
There were certain things he could have done that he didn't do. He didn't have to bail out Wall Street. We know Wall Street crimes took place of insider trading and market manipulation and predatory lending and fraudulent activity. He let them off the hook. He and Eric Holder. Eric comes out of Wall Street himself. He let them off the hook. He met with them and said, I stand between you and the pitchforks, but I will protect you. I don't believe a president, especially a black president, needs to say that to Wall Street. You need to say that to Main Street. So the homeowners were the one that had to pull themselves up by their own bootstraps. Same is true with drones. You know, George Bush dropped 46 drones and killed innocent people. Barack Obama dropped 549.
Now, I must say, considering what he's saying, to us, we're like, oh, this is a regular Saturday afternoon of what we normally say or either hear. But I must say, this is on the Stephen A. Smith show. This is a corporate network. This is Disney. So this is locally, this will be on the network in my area will be 710 ESPN is the AM radio show. But this is a national show, the Stephen A. Smith show. It's sponsored by FanDuel. You can see it on the screen there. So you're talking about FanDuel is like a betting site. So you're talking about corporate money is providing the advertisement for this show, and you're talking about the stature of a person who is literally the top paid person in sports media is this person. This is a big deal for me to be able to, in my opinion, I should say, not for me, but in my opinion, that he's saying some of the things that he's saying in particular about the Obama administration, because there's a lot of people in the black community, a lot of people, not just in the black community, but progressive community, our community, in the liberal community, who never have heard sort of critiques articulated about Barack Obama. And they're like maybe blown away because Dr. Cornell West has commanded such respect from everyone. He's able to go on platforms like this and spread a message that just simply any other candidate just cannot do. Other candidates are not being, he's being brought on this show, not because well, actually, this is Stephen A. Smith's regular show. He does a sports show. Now he's spun off and doing a regular show. But I see you shaking your head, Professor, and Michelle. I'll let you chime in. I'll go to Professor first. What say you about what Cornell West is doing? His ability to go on these networks, and he's going into. I just can't believe he's able to say these things on this network on ESPN like this. Go ahead.
I'm ecstatic, and I called it weeks ago. I said they are not going to be able. I'm not the only one who thinks this. They are not going to be able to ignore him, and that's why this candidacy has such amazing power. As you said, CJ, they respect him. I mean, this guy wrote Race Matters in the 90s. He's been deeply in deep conversations with on both sides. We've covered this on your show. He's been on Fox. He's been on CNN and I guess MSNBC. But he can't be ignored. And excuse me, I think some people are going to have a hard time hearing some of this about Obama because Obama is so well loved. And he's, here he is laying it out, talking about George Bush did drones and it was terrible. Obama did way more.
Right.
And I think that's important. And a side note on that, which I think really needs to be discussed more. When I hear liberals, vote blue no matter who, Democrats, talk about, well, Trump is racist, the Republicans are racist, Democrats are the wall between the terrible racist Republicans. And I'm like, what about your foreign policy? What is the color and the geographical location of the people we always drop bombs on? So you can't have a policy in the United States where you're against racism and a foreign policy that is inherently racist and classist. And so there's Cornell West talking about it, which I think is just an amazing moment. There's a lot of people that are going to be confused because maybe they've seen him on CNN and liked him. And all of a sudden, here he is saying this. So I think there's a tremendous power in that.
Absolutely. All right. So let's go to Michelle. I'm fixing a little glitch on my computer, so I'm going to turn my camera off, but I'm still here. So let's go to Michelle. What say you to the same sort of question now? You're a former Green official, but you're still part of the Green Party sort of movement. What do you think? I'm going to add a question for you. Same question that Anthony, but what do you think? Does he bring something unique or something you haven't seen that a candidate could possibly bring to the Green Party as a candidate, since you've been part of the Green Party for so long?
Yeah, so I support Cornell West's bid for election, and I hope he gets really far in this process. I would love to see him in office. And I still do have human real concerns about the ability of anybody to, it goes back to the comfort stuff, that I seem to harp on a lot lately. But I think what I love about Cornell West is he's open to having the conversations. And I think in this segment of the video earlier on, it talked about where he was saying he knows how to come to a conversation and listen to people. And I think that so much of the steady mainstream media diet that people have consumed over the years has hidden up so much truth of what our realities are, and because of that, until we start to unpack those partial truths that are very believable, because we don't want to believe our country is this horrible, awful kind of entity that it actually is. We don't see those gaps, and we believe Obama's doing great things. We believe the first Black president in the United States made great strides. Now, the area Obama did make great strides in during his pregnancy was around disability. And I think many people also do not know that. And then Biden has been recreating some of those policies and practices because we got disabled people employed by the federal government during the Obama administration. And that number has increased over time through the initiatives that have started around those time periods. There's still huge problems. Cornell West is very educated. He's very comfortable, to use my language, because I often forget that people that work even a full-time job, they're more well off than I ever have been, in my life. So my experience and the struggles within the Green Party include kind of that inclusion of disabled comrades, the disabled people in the party structure, that some of them are very much about disability rights. I think more of the exception because I've gone to disability equity, and I want more than just an accommodation to put me at the table. I want to be welcome with my flaws and all, as I want for every human being in this country to be embraced as a realistic person that we need at the table. We need to be informing our policies by the lived experience of the unhoused down the street. We need to be informed by the policies by this addict or that addict that didn't have adequate care or anything else. And I think Cornell West has the ability to bring those conversations into being. And I think that's where he holds his power. And that's where I support him. But within any structure, there are barriers, and those limitations of those structures are because of things like scarcity, of not having enough volunteers registered green to help support us on the ballot of every state that exists. When you go to the vote blue, no matter who, kind of what Professor Zenkus was saying is, when you do that, who are you voting against? And I'll say that Biden's policies on the pandemic are almost worse than Trump's were. For me as a disabled person, I will say that the lack of understanding of why I still need people to wear masks when they're out in public is huge, because nobody wants to put that piece of cloth on their face to protect those people that they're spewing their viruses to. Businesses are currently saying that we can have people that are currently sick come in and work to serve food in our restaurants. So how is all? Yeah, that was on disability Twitter today. So, where a worker had posted a comment about how her managers were hounding her to come in and weren't even giving her the grace of 5 days that is the current CDC recommendations. And these are happening in our grocery stores, in our restaurants, with teachers, with aides in the classroom, with all of these people. So vote blue means kill disabled people. Vote blue is a eugenicist movement that says seniors, our elders, and our disabled people aren't of value, do not contribute to our society because, again, of capitalism constructs. So with all of this, Cornell West gives me hope, but he also gives me great fear. We need people to register green so that we can get ballot access in all the states, because this is not really Cornell West's problem to solve. This is the people's problem to solve. And the Democrats are gunning 100% for Cornell West to not get ballot access in those states so that he doesn't have the opportunity to landslide victory in this country the way that we need him to do. And if people don't step up and do these things, no matter if you stay green or not, go register green today or tomorrow or Monday, whenever you can, register green to show your support of change. After the election, you can modify it. You can go back to being an independent. You can go back to other things. But until we have the people power behind us, the scarcity model wins, which means people are marginalized that need to be there and need to be present. So we need to come together. And that's why I value independent media, which CJ, you've largely introduced me to. You started me on that pathway of exploring more of this independent media. I had exposure to it in other places, but we need Cornell West. We need his presence, because he does speak also of some of the Black American experience. And regardless of how affluent his father was, regardless of how affluent he is. He's worked in a system that set him apart and set him on an uphill battle. And we need more people that have that awareness to bring those of us that are in the downtrodden stages, which is most people in our country at this point that earn a steady wage of a certain amount. You know, minimum wage doesn't support anybody. But so we need that representation. We need to be doing precinct organizing. We need to be taking these stories, taking the propaganda from mainstream media to the people to say, hey, yo, the diet you've consumed is not real facts. Here's more options to look at and to learn and to advance your understanding.
That is a great point. Several points actually you're making. So I think it's up to us, 3 of us here, RBN, everybody that supports Cornell West. We have to be the ones to start the push to get people sign up. So we have to do something about it. Maybe get a graphic created, but we have to start to push people to get signed up. That's green. I mean, that's what the next push in this step is, in this movement is that. So to your point, but Anthony, did you also want to chime in on anything here before we get back to the video? Anything she said?
Yeah, great stuff, Michelle. And let's just emphasize in a positive way, because I know it's so easy to feel defeated in this sick, inhumane system. But let's look at it from an exciting and a positive framework. We have the opportunity to get a whole bunch of people involved in walking up and down streets and getting signatures to put Greens on the ballot. Because most Americans, regardless of their political affiliation, agree that more choice is better than less choice. When you get down to it, forget what's on the mainstream media. So we've got this great opportunity. Anybody can do it. And if you can't do the physical going door to door, maybe you can make phone calls. Maybe you could there's something everybody can do. Mm-hmm. And that's why the disability conversation enters here. What is it you're capable of? And I love that, that whole framing of marks from each according to their abilities to each according to their needs. The idea is everybody can contribute something, and we should value every contribution, no matter what it is. We're not measuring it. Maybe you have 1 day a month to give up. Maybe you have 1 hour. It doesn't matter. Maybe you're not mobile, but you can make phone calls. Whatever it is, we all can do something. And I think it's inspirational because Bernie Sanders had us. I remember the excitement and thinking, what can I do? And then we know what happened with that movement. It kind of just was not useful anymore and it went away. Well, those people are still there and there's more of us now. So I just feel excited that we should always frame it positively. We can have a huge effect on what goes on in our lives and the lives of others, getting involved in any capacity we can, getting Greens on the ballots, getting involved, as CJ and Nick always talk about, what's going on locally, see what's happening locally. So I think there's a big opportunity to have a wave of involvement we haven't seen in a very long time in this country.
Great point again. And let's let this video finish out a little less than 3 minutes. Let's listen.
And killed innocent people. Those are wrong. They had Tuesday meetings at night deciding who to kill. And too often it was innocent folk fighting terrorism. Oh, wait a minute. Yeah, so we're at war with combatants. That's a separate thing. Innocent people are being killed. And they lied about it, denied it, and then later on it's true. So that if you're going to be president, no matter what color, and you're going to be head of the empire, either tell people the truth about various kinds of things you're doing. And there are certain things you can choose. He didn't choose to hit mass incarceration head on. The new Jim Crow. We got a black president and you're not dealing with the new Jim Crow. That's why you got a Black Lives Matter movement under a black president. Because the younger generation said, wait a minute, these police are doing us in, and we got black president, we got black attorney general, we got black homeland security. Black faces in high places doesn't always translate into black empowerment of poor and working people. We had to bring critique to bear, and that's exactly what I did during the Obama administration. Remember, Tavis Smiley and I having poverty tours.
Yes.
I wanted to talk about poverty. I wanted to talk about mass incarceration.
So again, this is, as you can see, this is the Stephen A. Smith show. This is like a regular show. It's not just sports. He does, I don't know if he has Sean Hannity or if he went on Sean Hannity's show, but he does regular people on the show. So that was a lot. He has a lot of people ears listening, and for Cornell West to get all of that in about Obama is great. And let's continue.
We got a black president. Let's show up at the jails and say what's wrong, and give your arguments as to why you want to preserve this and do away with this, reform this.
Right. Well, I did see Barack Obama show up at a couple of jails. I think one was televised where he did that.
So you have the black capitalist class, of course, who coming in to swoop in and say something. Oh, let me try to balance this conversation out. Here's something positive about Obama. But then Cornell West says, hold on. There's another detail about that you're saying, Stephen A.
When I think about
that meeting his 7th year with nonviolent offenders.
Okay, I see what you're saying. And
so he said, hold on. That photo op was nonviolent offenders in his 7th year on an 8-year reign. So let's not go overboard there, Stephen A. And he has to admit. Yeah, he knew.
He knew exactly when it happened, what part of the presidency, and that's why, like, they've never dealt with the Cornell West before like this, because they're not used to it. They're used to being able to shut the people down and be like, he did that thing. I saw him go to a prison, and people go, oh no. Cornell West is like, no, I'm not having this. Here's what really happened, and they don't know what to do.
Yeah, and because of their level of respect for him. When he retorts, they have to acknowledge he makes a point. Yeah. Like he just did here. He's like, yeah. Okay, that's true. So like because that's just out of a respect. But let's continue, and then we can give our final comments in a second.
And then obviously, and then when he bailed out Wall Street, you're thinking about the economy because he came into office during a recession, and obviously the country was falling apart. So I think that was a forgivable position for him to take because you obviously was in a state of emergency. You didn't inherit everything when it was peachy clean and was smooth sailing. You inherit.
So again, you have the black capitalist class who are trying to come and play Captain Save 'em for Obama because he's saying, you got to give him a pass on this. He's saying even more. He's trying to say and push him back.
Inherited a problem, okay, under the George W. Bush administration. I got to take that into consideration as well.
That's exactly the moment where you got Wall Street against the wall. You can bring leverage to bear so that poor and working people could get more concessions. If you just bail them out, they come out stronger with no accountability. And what happens? The black middle class.
You see how he is able. Because of his, or maybe it's because I'm gonna assume because of his intellect, or because he's done these interviews, he has the ability to swat down these sort of typical talking point retorts to his line of thinking, that he swats it down with something that's logical, where even his opponent, in this case is Stephen A., is his opponent in the conversation at least. Has to acknowledge that's the point, and he does so with the shaking of his head. I'm trying to get through the video. It says 30 more seconds. Let's see what else he says here.
That's lose 58% of our wealth. Why? Because most of our wealth in our homes. And we lost our homes because of that. It was the homeowners that had to bear the burden. So I would have said, hey, we understand there were a number of things that he wanted to do that he couldn't, but you don't punt on 2nd down. You punt on the 4th down. You push it as far as you can go. You don't go to Wall Street and say, I will protect you.
And that's what you would
have been committing crimes against these people, predatory lending. You're going to be punished. And then I'm going to extract some kind of concessions out of you.
Last question. Last.
So that's one good clip, and I think there's a, believe it or not, there is a more substantive clip, but I might be saying that word wrong. Substantive clip. I saw. Where did I see that?
I just love, if I could just say that he said, you know,
Yeah, go ahead.
Second down to Stephen A. Smith. It's
Yeah.
like you know, and that's what Cornell can do, because I'm on a first name basis. I've never met him. That's what Dr. West can do, because he is an academic and surely can talk in academic language, but he also is a regular person and knows how to communicate with people. And I just thought that was beautiful.
I really agree too that Cornell West in his interviews that he's had up to this point have really shown his core kind of connection with the people. And I think that's an important variable to remember, is just how he stays grounded in what people need. He allows the question and he reframes it back where he needs to reframe it, which is, who does this policy or this positive impact negatively? And let's remember who it impacts negatively. You know, and that's kind of speaking again back to the propaganda machines, you know?
Absolutely. And let me play the second clip. This is a lot shorter. And I skipped past Stephen A. talking just in case. But let me set up the clip. It says, Cornell West asked why he didn't encourage another Democrat to run instead of running for president. Why somebody else? Why not somebody else, basically, is what Stephen A. Smith is asked him here. So let's listen to his answer.
Party and the neo-fascists in the Republican Party. All Republicans are not neo-fascists, and all folks.
Hang on, we may have to listen to this question here. So let's hope fair use will apply.
Look at somebody like a Kamala Harris. Why not encourage?
And the reason is because of I forget, now I remember, it's the two names he uses, Gavin Newsom and Kamala Harris. So I must play the asking of the question in order for this to really have its effect. So let's listen.
Why not look at somebody like a Kamala Harris? Why not encourage somebody like a Gavin Newsom or somebody along those lines, the governor in California, and try to partner with them? Why did you decide to go that route?
Because what happens is that the milquetoast Democratic Party.
So, you know, we're thinking like, what? Kamala Harris and Gavin Newsom? That's our reaction. But try to put ourselves in what his audience, and this is why I'm saying, in the same way, we're like, what? Like, they're thinking, they may be thinking the same thing when they heard that about Obama, which is a good thing that they're hearing that. It's a good thing that they're hearing, his audience is hearing that. So I'm hoping also when he brings up these two pop culture names, Gavin Newsom and Kamala Harris, that these people who may not even understand how these are two terrible neoliberals, Cornell West will be able to explain that to this large audience that may have never heard such critiques of these two people. So that's why I think this is important. So let's listen.
And the neo-fascists in the Republican Party. All Republicans are not neo-fascists, and all folks who vote for Trump are not neo-fascists. 1 out of 8 of those who voted for Trump voted for Brother Bernie Sanders. So we have to recognize how diverse his social base is, but he himself was a neo-fascist. But the Republican and Democratic parties are parasitic on each other because they both get the same big money from the big donors and big benefactors. See? They both are tied to military expansion. You notice anytime you have debates about the defense spending, you get bipartisanship. They're supposed to be at each other's throats. But no. You get bipartisanship when those kind of issues come along. Meaning what? Meaning that both parties are parties of the corporate elite. And if we don't break that, then the neo-fascists will win, because sooner or later Republicans are going to win. And the Democrats are just a postponement of it. The Democrats are a caretaker administration, and sooner or later the fascists will win. You don't defeat fascism by going milquetoast.
This is what his audience has never heard. They heard all the propaganda about fascism, 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 Trump, 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 scare, scare, scare. What they haven't heard is them saying voting for Biden is not going to fix the fascism. That's what the audience has never heard, in my opinion, or maybe have rarely heard, which is why, to your point earlier, Professor, his candidacy is so important because he is so roundly respected. He is allowed to come on these places that he's not a normal. You're not going to see Marianne Williamson on the Stephen A. Smith show. You're not going to see RFK Jr. on the Stephen A. Smith show. This is the point why his candidacy could be, if to Michelle's point, if we can get the right numbers, if we can get the volunteers, if we can get the right everything, this could be game changing because of who he is. He is uniquely, perfectly set for this moment to be the candidate to push the Green Party. Like if we're gonna write, if in 20 years we're like the Green Party has solidified itself as a standard third party, meaning now it's three parties we're picking from and it's standard that we're picking from, this is the candidate, in my opinion, that's going to be sort of the root of that happening. This is the candidate that's going to sort of make that happen. Now, I'll let it play some more, and then I'll let both of you comment all of what is being said, because there's only 30 seconds left. So let's let it play, and then I'll go to Michelle first, and then Professor.
You defeat fascism by going directly into their face. That's like Martin Luther King Jr. depending on the moderate whites to break the back of American apartheid. If he had depended solely on them, you and I, living in the South, I know you from Hollis, Queens.
That's right.
That's a cool thing. Born in the Bronx,
right.
That's a beautiful thing. But I'm a Southern brother who grew up in California, right? Born in Oklahoma. That American apartheid was still being placed, man. You got to hit it head on with vision, passion, courage, and a love of the people.
Vision, passion, courage, and a love of the people. Michelle, what say you about what Cornell says in this video about why not Gavin Newsom? And I'm going to turn my camera off again. And why not Gavin Newsom and Kamala Harris?
You know, I can say a lot about Gavin Newsom and Kamala Harris, but I want to kind of target a little bit more the realities of two corporate parties and the difference of the Greens being a non-corporate funded party. You know, and this is an important point that people don't focus on very much. You know, when you have a corporation electing people, you have them electing people in what will support the corporations. You know, Democrats elect Democrats, people that are going to support the Democratic Party. Republicans elect Republicans that are going to support the Republican Party, going to support also the corporations that back these parties. So with Gavin Newsom, he's heavily funded, I believe, by the oil industry. He's also funded by the healthcare industry. So we will never get healthcare for all if those industries are the supporters of those candidates. So this is why we need a people-led, people-powered party, which technically the Green Party has achieved over many years. We've not gone back. Some individual Greens may have changed their course and accepted corporate funding because it's hard to run against a corporation. You know, I go out and I worry about the power my government has over me as a business in my local area. You know, my city and county governments, what they deem is correct, they have a lot of power to make that happen. And it doesn't matter who's in office, that power is codified by the laws and the policies that have been created historically over time. So Cornell West is bringing up this corporate reality and this gap in everybody's knowledge, I will say, because we've been spoon-fed that we vote blue no matter who. We've been spoon-fed that you're either a Democrat or a Republican in America, and supporting anything else is wrong, you know, or if you support something extra, you're going to get the wrong candidate elected. You know, there are policies in place that allowed these people to be as toxic as they have been to us. There are things that were in place that allowed Trump to maneuver in ways that Trump maneuvered, and he harmed a lot of people. Biden, equally so, has harmed a lot of people. Gavin Newsom, while you can mitigate that harm somewhat with some of his policies, woo-woo policies and things like that, you still don't get equity at the baseline of everything, because what you have is corporations getting more funding, corporations gaining in wealth, corporations gaining in power. You get what AOC brought up, which is we need to go away from the regulations because these businesses need to make more money. You know, and that's kind of the crux of AOC's clip that we did earlier when we were talking about all of that. You know, and I think that until we realize the power and influence of money and the power of influence of these corporate entities that were made into, given a personhood via Citizens United, that were given power and influence in our government in ways that has been like on steroids of late, we don't realize what we're fighting against. And we're not fighting against Biden. We're not fighting against Trump. We're not fighting against Gavin Newsom and Kamala Harris. What we're fighting against is the power that is and the power that will be, depending on who's the candidate that's actually pushing these policies and pushing the agenda. But we still go back to needing people power. So we need the people in the room. We need the pathways to everybody having their base needs met. Until we reach that level where base needs are met in the United States, we're fighting a battle that is uphill and heavy and scary. And until you and I can pay our rent and know that we don't have to worry about the roof over our head, you know, I'm using you as a euphemistic you here, not necessarily.
Absolutely.
You know,
Absolutely.
But until we can guarantee we can go to the doctor and have a healthcare need met. We can have our food needs met. We can have healthy food needs met. Not a bunch of white foods that are bread and white bread and white rice and you know, maybe a little bit of protein thrown in for extra, you know. But until we reach that point, we have to really struggle, and we need those people that can struggle and do this. And I think Cornell West is positioned in a way that he can kind of carry this mantle forward and create some important change.
Yes, and Anthony, same sort of question. What say you about this second clip of Cornell West basically explaining why not Gavin Newsom and Kamala Harris, but he explains it in a way to talk about the corruption of the Democratic and Republican Party, how they're equally corrupt?
Yeah, I think he's really well positioned, Dr. West is, to have these conversations. He knows his stuff. And, you know, I guess for people in our world who swim in our waters, we hear that, like, what about Kamala Harris? You know, as if Stephen A. Smith was just thinking, oh, you just don't like Biden. Well, how about this other Biden? Who's
right.
And who's a woman and who's brown? She is a woman, she is brown, and she is younger. But she's still Biden. I mean, they're still working for the same people. I think he did a really good job. And look, as there were some complaints about Cornell West's or critiques of Cornell West's performance on CNN a couple of weeks back, and I understand them. Listen, he's just starting. So he's going to, even though he's an accomplished communicator, he's going to learn as time goes on. He gets better and better each time, honing that message, how to target the audience you're speaking to, and to let them know, listen, this, and you know, he uses this phrase, milk toast. These guys are weak, they're feckless, and he's pointing it out. So I just think he's doing great and drawing a distinction, because it's going to have to keep happening, where West is going to have to shoulder the burden of explaining on our behalf to the establishment, people like Stephen A. Smith, why would there be a need for a third party at all? I mean, that's really the crux of why they're having him on. Like, why would they don't understand why he's doing this? Why don't you just get another Democrat? So that's where they're coming from. So every conversation he has, at least at the beginning phase of this, is going to be an education about why we need to work outside of this two-party system and why it's important. One quick point that I think would be helpful if I were, able to get some advice through to the candidate, Dr. West, it would be, and he's referenced it, but let's really lean into those 100 million people that didn't vote in 2016. Let's lean into the 1.7 million people who left the president line blank. Let's lean into those. So when they start saying, well, don't you think you're going to hurt Biden? West can say, listen, 100 million people didn't vote 4 years ago. Yes, we had record turnout last time around, but it was a very weird situation with COVID and everything and Trump. We're going back to more like 2016 and 2024. We need to reach out to these voters, ask them the question, why do you think 100 million people just don't vote? And yes, there's accessibility issues, but that's not most of that 100 million. And one last thing I just want to notice, there was a super chat that came up where the person said the Greens are aligned with the pro-Ukraine issue. And I just want to throw that out. That is not true. We're pro everybody. But as far as pro-Ukraine proxy war, Cornell West is firmly against that. And I just want to make that clear for those who may have seen that super chat. You all can talk about more of that if you want.
Yeah. I think we could probably, we could close that segment on that comment because, again, don't want to play too much of the video so that I can use the fair use thing, the fair use excuse for being able to play that clip without any issue. So we're going to move to the next story, and that next story involves Mehdi Hasan going on. And it's related because it's still talking about third parties, but it's just not through the lens of he does bring up Dr. Cornell West, but it's not through the lens of Dr. Cornell West speaking himself. So let's talk about this clip. This is also from Case Study QB. I think I'm using like 6 or 7 of his clips today. This is Mehdi Hasan going on to Morning Joe to talk about third parties. And it says Mehdi Hasan adds how serious he takes the third party threat to a Biden administration. And he talks, it's about a 5-minute segment. Let's listen and discuss. The two of you can just let me know whenever you want to stop it. Just say, hey, pause it here, and I'll pause it. So let's listen.
I wanted to ask you about the argument on no labels. I just figured this out because I'm slow. But if you take Ralph Nader's 2 or 3% away from the 2000 election and Jill Stein's 2 or 3% away from the 2016 election, I think it's quite possible that Democrats would have won every election this century. The question is, assuming, of course, in 2004 that it would have been Gore running for re-election and not George W. Bush, who won in part because of Ralph Nader. How serious do you take this third-party threat? And what's the best argument? Because I'm always listening to you. Your book, Win Every Argument, is an incredible book. What is the best argument when you're talking to no labels, trying to dissuade them or trying to encourage them to move in one direction or the other?
Well, first of all, I agree with Tom that we should be very concerned about the prospect of a second Trump term. Anyone who thinks Donald Trump can't win next time round is not paying attention, wasn't paying attention to the margins in places like Wisconsin in 2020, doesn't understand how American politics works, which is fundamentally a two-party system. And then there's a few swing voters and a few people who want to vote third party. I think the third party threat is very serious. It's always been very serious. I don't think it just comes from no labels and a Joe Manchin type, but it also comes from someone like a Cornell West, who I personally personally have a lot of time for his politics, but I think it's bad for the left to vote for Cornell West when fascism is at the door. And Cornell West himself in 2020 said fascism was at the door and didn't run third party then.
I want to really emphasize some of what he's saying. He's saying that the status quo, the way things are of the Democrats and the Republicans, is the best way of being. And I think that if the status quo is where we are today, what he's saying is we continue as we are today because that's what we want. But that's not what a lot of people want. And this constant fighting about who's voting for who, when we have the electoral college that is problematic also to start with, it's like, who's not voting? Who wouldn't have voted if this other person was on the ballot? And that's been the Green, a lot of what's shared within Green Spaces is, that you get a lot of non-voters that are voting when this additional candidate is. And if America is really, truly a democracy, and if that's what we want to be as a democracy, it means everybody's showing up and everybody's voting their heart and their minds, not accepting the status quo system that we currently have. So sorry, it just really resonated with that with me. So
no, I also wanted to stop it in a similar place because he makes the comment of he doesn't think that he thinks it's a mistake that the left would be voting or supporting Cornell West at a time like this with fascism right at the doorstep. I just don't think this is an effective argument anymore. We've lived through both presidencies, Joe Biden and Trump, so it's just not the most effective selling point of a Biden administration to say Trump worse. You can't tell us we can just reflect back to what it was. You know what I mean? Like, so there's no fearing that you can do anymore. And then to say fascism at the door, when at the same time, the Democrats are the ones in power that's instilling fascism through social media. The Democrats are in power, are the ones that's marching us to war with two nuclear powers, and so on and so on. The funding of the military. I mean, I can just keep going on. It's bizarre. It's so ineffective because the Democrats are in power doing so much bad stuff. I guess that's an easier way of saying it. Professor, it looks like you were going to chime in. Go ahead.
I don't know. It always looks like that for me. I feel like exactly Jay and Michelle, I'm just going to echo that. But what the hell is fascism? We don't even define our terms. Not us, them. Yes. So fascism is at the door. And actually, I do think it merits repeating what Democrats have done in joining with Republicans to push a fascist agenda, a neoliberal, fascist, authoritarian agenda. I mean, it started before this, but a point I go back to is 2006, when Nancy Pelosi became Speaker of the House again, halfway through George Bush's second term. And the question was, would impeachment be on the table? Because George Bush lied about spying on Americans, listening to our phone calls, reading our emails without warrants, illegally, unconstitutionally, violation of the Fourth Amendment, a whole bunch of other stuff. And the first thing she said when she became Speaker in 2006 was, impeachment is off the table. So Democrats did not hold Republicans accountable for a massive surveillance program which was unconstitutional and continues today. And then Obama becomes president, and in the 2012 Defense Authorization Act, signs that into law, even though it includes indefinite detention of anyone, including American citizens, without charge or trial. Literally, Obama overturned habeas corpus in the United States. That's fascism. And now what you're talking about, CJ, you mentioned with the censorship. Absolutely. The government is controlling the town square, which is social media, and not letting people speak. We have fascism here. And the question I would love to see Cornell West ask, or somebody to these people, is how many Americans voted to send $130, $140 now billion to Ukraine for a proxy war. Who voted for that? Why do we never get to discuss it? Because, you know, Hitler didn't consult with the German people when he rolled into Poland in 1939. Well, what's going on here? Nobody's consulting with us about this. And the majority of American people don't want to give any more money to Ukraine. Fascism is here. We have to define what it is and talk about it. So we're not preventing it. I mean, what's Trump going to do? At January 6th aside, which is a whole discussion, he didn't rule. Trump was a fairly less than competent president when it came to getting his agenda passed. He wasn't very effective. He didn't do things. He just didn't. He wasn't. I mean, and that's good. But like the difference between his rhetoric and our perception of him, Democrats' perception of him, the media's perception of Trump, and the way he ruled for 4 years, he didn't do. He talked a good game if you're a conservative, right? But he didn't really dictatorial get that agenda through. And it's a good thing, but he wasn't very effective at it. So what are we afraid of? And I think that people need to talk about it because there's these assumptions that are made. Trump's a fascist. Republicans are fascists. They hate democracy. We have to stop them. Well, let's talk about it because I want to talk about why is it still okay that you are listening to my phone calls and reading my emails? That's fucking fascist. And why is nobody running on stopping it? Why does that never get overturned? You know, there's no breakdowns in these conversations. They never drill down. They just throw the words out.
Absolutely. And we can continue with the video. I don't think I have to refresh it. It looks like it's going to play. Let's see.
I want to just
take your point on 2000 with Ralph Nader.
Go ahead, Michelle.
I want to kind of add to something that Professor said, which is we also don't see layers of fascism that exist because the one area where Trump did do enormous harm, well, there's two areas. One is the judges that are appointed. The second one is disabled people. The public benefits that we rely on, Trump added certain programs and processes that still haven't fully been unwound. And those are the layers of fascism that we cannot see when they're enacted outside of our knowledge base, you know, that we really also need to remember, because I have to sit with a bunch of disabled voters, that people with disabilities that will vote blue no matter who, because the risks of allowing the Republicans to be in power impact us greatly. I want to see a better system created that will make sure that people can vote who they want to vote for and not have to worry about the harms that are going to happen from one party or the other party being in power. And it brings up the whole element of why people don't see fascism. It's because a lot of times the fascism that's been going on since the foundation of this country has been pretty firmly rooted in Black and brown communities. And in the immigrant communities, those communities designated as other, you know, and that's where we can look away from the fascism because it's not in our bubble, you know, and we need to start looking towards the people that have experienced the fascism and let them run with what the definition actually is so that we get more change over time.
Great point again. And let's continue.
Joe, 2016, I think, is a little bit more complicated because it's not just Jill Stein. There's Gary Johnson, who was taking votes away from Trump. So there's an argument about whether Stein and Johnson canceled each other out. We'll never really know. But look, the third-party candidate threat is very real, even going back to Ross Perot in the early 90s. I would say this about no labels. You want to talk about us being on different sides. Let me say this where I disagree with you, Joe. You're far too generous to the no labels people. When you say, you know, I don't agree, you know, I don't question their motives or their intentions. I do. I don't know what the hell it is. I mean, Molly puts the point, hope they're naive. It's at best a vanity campaign. At worst, it is a kind of right-wing op. Joe Manchin spent years undermining Joe Biden's presidency, undermining the Democrats in the Senate. And now, after saying, oh, it's rubbish, it's BS, and I'll leave the party, he's now considering a no-labels presidential run. What I would say to someone who pushes this line, and there are a lot of ordinary Americans out there who do say, look, I just want someone in the middle. I want this kind of bipartisan age. Donnie sided the polls. I would say one very simple thing. That person exists. His name is Joseph Robinette Biden. He is the guy of moderate bipartisan dreams.
It's just the reselling of Joe Biden for Mehdi Hasan. Is that so? Mehdi Hasan is coming on to say not only is no labels third party a problem, you're a problem in a different way. You're a problem. So he's saying two things at the same time. Let's get what he's saying. At the same time, he's saying no labels. We don't need you because you're looking for a middle ground. Joe Biden, moderate of all moderates. And while at the same time, Cornell West, we don't need you because Joe Biden has been doing some progressive things, getting some progressive goals accomplished. Now, I don't know. Oh, yeah, he doesn't say that in this video, but in previous videos. So he's saying two things at the same time about Joe Biden trying to advocate for him. Or trying to advocate against anyone else joining the race. Are you familiar, Michelle, with a lot of Mehdi Hasan's politics, or this is like one of the first times you've heard of him?
I think that I see him on my Twitter feed when the people I follow shared the videos, and while I can. It's similar. I don't really, there's only so much bandwidth my brain has with this, the vote blue no matter who, or we're gonna, make better out of the world of that already doesn't exist. So I think that he's been kind of, I probably shouldn't say that. He's been kind of not on my periphery by my choice. It's I listen when I see things, when I watch your streams, when I watch RBN streams, I hear some of these tidbits and these little bits of things, but I also have my own little BS meter that says, okay, I'm not going to waste my time on his stuff right now because I'm busy doing all these other things, which does limit my reach some because there are just some things I don't have the time and energy to focus on this day or that day. So yeah.
No, and that could be a good thing in many ways that you are unplugged. I mean, I say that a lot about a lot of stories too. But in this case, Mehdi Hasan, who is supposedly now he's brought on as the supposed progressive. So in the context of that, this is where he's not playing a admirable role for the left to come on to shield for Biden, and that's what he's doing. I'm going to let the video play out, and then we can get a couple more comments and move to the next topic here.
In 2020, he wasn't my guy. He wasn't people like me who were more progressive, were like, is Joe Biden really? But we recognize now in office, he is the guy he claimed to be. He's the guy who wants to be the centrist, the moderate. He wants to reach out across the aisle. He calls Republicans his friends. He exists, right? You couldn't make him in a lab. Joe Biden is that guy who sings the praises of bipartisanship at a time when one of our two parties is neo-fascistic. So I'm not sure what more these kind of independent, centrist, quote unquote moderates want when Joe Biden already is running for president again.
Well, and it's what I've always said to my friends that have said, oh, Biden, my Republican friends, oh, Biden, he's left wing, he's a Marxist. Are you kidding me? The biggest knock on Joe Biden was he was too kind to the banks and the credit card companies. He was the senator from corporate Delaware, and I will say this, the progressives pre-Biden always got the knock of being unrealistic. I have been absolutely blown away by the discipline on people that I would consider to be on the far left of the Democratic Party. They have shown more discipline.
Listen to this last part that he makes a point about the squad, elected progressives, AOC, Bernie Sanders.
dealing with a guy, Mehdi, who is extraordinarily moderate. He really is. If you look at where we are between the left and the Democratic Party and the right and the Republican Party, he really is the moderate. He ran against 14, 15 progressives in 2020. And they said, we'll take the moderate.
Joe, what I say is, you look at AOC. AOC has said in the past that in a European country, her and Joe Biden wouldn't be in the same party, right? And yet AOC has come out and endorsed Joe Biden for re-election, taking a lot of flack from some activists on the left. But the reality...
Now, understand, this is, I'm using this opportunity because I made this point before. When they use the term activist, they're using it as a slur. They're using it as a slur when he says activists on, or when they say online people, online left, that's another, the way they're using it is as a slur. I don't, it's like whatever to me, but this is where AOC is playing the role of that she understands and accepts she's playing a role for the establishment. People are able to point to her. This is the exact reason she came out and this is the exact reason why I say this kind of solidifies her as an establishment figure when she comes out and says, yes, I'm endorsing Joe Biden on the same day that they're announcing cluster munitions, is that she's fully accepted the role of being the person that people can reference. Like he references here. He goes, AOC is left. And she even says, in another world, they wouldn't even be in the same party. And look what she did, guys. Look at what she did, everybody. She endorsed Joe Biden herself. You see how reasonable people do it? And that's sort of how she's going to be used, whether she likes it or not. But I think she knows that that's how she's going to be used. And it's just sad. And in a matter of 3 or 4 years, 5 years, however long she's been elected, it's just very quick, this turnaround for me, or for my understanding of AOC. 20 seconds, and let's let it play.
Reality is the left understands two things. Number one, there is a fascist threat at the door, number one. And number two, Joe Biden's actually governed in a pretty progressive way and taken on...
Look, didn't I tell you? He governed in a pretty progressive way when he just said there's a moderate. And this is the same segment. He's saying Joe Biden is a moderate and a progressive at the same time to benefit whoever he's talking about. Crazy.
Could on board a lot of Bernie ideas, Warren ideas, and not as many as some of us might like, but more than we thought, and you can build on that.
Just sad to see Mehdi, because at one point he was considered like a good advocate, a person who stood for something and stood his principle, but obviously ever since going corporate cable, he has completely sort of sold out the idea of progressivism, I think, and also, and the thing is, do these progressives know they're just being used to bash third parties? That's it. They don't care about what you have to say, Mehdi. When's the last time you've been on Morning Joe, Mehdi Hasan, when you advocating for Medicare for all? But when you're talking against the third party, that's when they're going to bring you on. Same with black folks. They do the same thing with black folks. But let's go to Professor, then we'll go to Michelle. Any final words on the segment about what he says about third parties and how he's saying now is not the time? I mean, he's just another person. But this is a supposed progressive that's saying it. And then anything else he says in a video you want to comment on. But go ahead, and then we'll go to Michelle.
Yeah, I don't really believe AOC or Mehdi Hasan were ever progressives. And here's why. Like, you don't just change. Like, what I get people becoming radicalized in a short period of time because there's been an event or something happened that either directly or somewhat directly affected them or that they witnessed. I don't understand people being de-radicalized in just a year or two. Maybe it's the power of the money. See, nobody's ever like dangled 20 million a year in front of me. I don't know how much Mehdi Hasan gets, but like, I will tell you, in the words of Mark Twain, I'm generally against the idea of millionaires, but it might be dangerous to offer me the position. Like, so I don't know. I don't know if they throw it at me. But here's the thing. I kind of know. there's no way AOC ran and said, what's wrong with being a one-term Congress member? Maybe that's what it takes. And all of a sudden, within 2 years, she was like, oh no, I don't want that. To me, you were always an op. And it's sad for me to say it because I really liked her in the beginning. And I was excited when she and other members of the squad endorsed Bernie. It was exciting for me. And I thought, yes, this is great momentum. And then, you know, you see how they did it. They only let, Noam Chomsky is really good at describing this. There is only a certain box that we're allowed to talk about. And that's the discussion, a circle of certainty where everything is assumed and known, and this is left and this is right. And nothing else outside of that spectrum exists. It's as if we were looking at, you know, the rainbow, but we were only able to see green and yellow and then never talk about the other colors. Makes no sense. So they're never allowed, like they can say Mehdi Hasan is left when, and CJ very clearly points it out, he never talks about Medicare for all. We are in a crisis. 68,000 people, that's like 180-ish people a day, die each year in this country because Democrats and Republicans are addicted to big pharma and big insurance cash, right? And going to the disabilities piece, of course it affects the more vulnerable people more severely. And we could tomorrow do something about it. Almost 1,000 people froze to death under bridges and sleeping on sidewalks last year, and almost every year it's about that 700, 900, 1,000, because we don't have a federal housing guarantee. And we could have done it in a heartbeat with the 24 billion that Joe Biden just promised to Ukraine. 20 billion of it could have housed everybody for the next year. So we know these things. They never talk about it. MSNBC. And sadly, and if I can throw this out, I used to be one of those people who watched every show in the evening lineup of MSNBC. You know, and I get a lot of crap from liberals, who the attack dogs online, who are like, you're an operative for MAGA, you're really a Republican. Dude, I've been a Democrat my whole life. You know, I've always leaned towards socialist, but I kept trying. But I used to watch the lineup from Chris Matthews
Yeah,
when he was on,
me too.
all the way through Lawrence O'Donnell. And then I remember, like, there was a particular story of Israel, this was way back when, boarding an aid ship to the Palestinians and killing aid workers, and they didn't cover it. They didn't talk about it on those shows. And I'm like, that's weird. And then in 2015, when they fired Ed Schultz and really allowed no coverage of Bernie, and I thought, this is weird. And then I realized, oh, it's not weird. This is who they are. But people need to remember MSNBC, when it came out as a station, was conservative when it started. It had really crazy right-wing conservatives on, and the most left person they had on, they did give a show to Phil Donahue, but then they took it off the air, right? They don't have a belief system. None of these people do. If we think this is the world, we're screwed, right? And most people do. Well, this is the discussion. This is not the discussion. You go talk to people, and this is what Cornell West is going to do. He's literally going to go around the country. He's starting, you know, on the 25th, and which is, he's going to be talking about Emmett Till's legacy and like why that matters as he launches his campaign. But he's going to be going into Trump country. He's going to be sitting down in coffee shops, having conversations with people, and they don't want that to happen.
Right.
MSNBC especially. But here's the good news. I'll wrap it up. That was long-winded. Nobody is fucking watching MSNBC. Nobody's watching these stations. Fox is leading again, but their numbers aren't great. Cable news is dying. It is dying. It is not what it was. So that's an opportunity for folks like you, right? Independent news to step up because and reach more people. Thank God nobody's listening to these people. Really, it's the professional class. That's it. Not most Americans.
Absolutely. And we'll go to Michelle for no final words and your reaction also to the Mehdi Hasan clip.
I think it's important to realize that within the systems and structures we occupy, the tools have already been weaponized. The words have already been weaponized depending on the climate that we're engaging with at that point in time. Much like professors said about, when we hear them talk about centrists and leftists and all this other stuff, technically most of the time they're not even on point with that. Biden is nowhere near left of center.
Right.
AOC is marginally at the center, maybe. Bernie Sanders was left of center, but he was left of center in a way that was impacted by what membership he held, what system he had to occupy, and what system he had to maneuver within. We take the realities of what we know and we weaponize them against the people that we may not like, or we may not agree with, or we may think they're pushing on the wrong button, and that's the climate that we've created in the United States, where instead of me sitting down with another person that makes me feel uncomfortable or that I don't agree with, instead I get behind the gang of the moment, the bully of the moment, and I use that bully to shield myself from that discomfort. Our medical system, our systems we navigate, they've created this toxic mix of realities, and they're codified by when we say Democrats, when we say Republicans, when we say leftists, centrists, or rightist people, instead of deconstructing those power structures and just starting to talk with the person in front of you and to learn from them, to state, I disagree with you, instead of saying, I'm an enormous white woman that's spouting something that you don't agree with. That's the weapons of the master class. That's the weapons that were brought into this stream today.
Mm-hmm.
People need to realize the power of their words and the fact that those words recreate the struggles that all of us are enduring. And we're all responsible. We're all responsible, even at a time when we're passionate about something and we want to see changes. We are still responsible to be ethical to our human beings around us and to realize where those thoughts come from, because they didn't come from me. I mean, I've done some bad things in my life. I've been racist. I've been classist. I've been, I have actively marginalized people in my life when I didn't really realize I was doing it. But that doesn't negate that I have that responsibility to still understand where my actions were and what my actions were accomplishing. But I appreciate being in conversation with you too.
Absolutely, and can't agree more with a lot what you were saying there. So great to okay, so let's end it there, or at least that segment will end there, and we're gonna do just two quick segments, really, where I'm just gonna be playing a video or showing a tweet and then just kind of getting your reaction, and we're gonna sort of close out the stream in the next 10-15 minutes or so. So let me play this video, and it's a 2-minute video. This is of Cenk Uygur having a critique of, where is it at? Oh, of Bernie Sanders. And let's listen to what he's saying here, and then we'll comment, and then I got another video I'll play and then get comments too. So again, these will be 2 quick segments we'll do, but let's actually, let me read the caption just to give you a little bit more background here. Another case study QB video, TYT Cenk Uygur discussing Bernie Sanders not going on progressive shows anymore and missed opportunities to fight for 15. So he's talking about the fight for 15 and Bernie Sanders shunning leftists. I guess he's including TYT in that. I'm assuming that's why he's saying that. So, but let's listen.
How much did they cave on $15 minimum wage when they could have fought? It's not theoretical, guys. There's actual facts. Even after they lost in the first COVID relief bill, while barely fighting. And by the way, the Young Turks audience had to shame Bernie Sanders into proposing it as an amendment. He was just going to let Schumer take it out of the bill. That's just a fact. And by the way, Bernie Sanders won't come on any progressive shows anymore. I don't know, maybe he'll go on ones that promise him softballs. But he goes on Bill Maher, he goes on mainstream media shows, but he won't come on here because he knows we're going to ask him, so what are you going to do to pass it, Bernie? Is this just marketing, or do you actually mean it? So last thing is,
it's so cute how Cenk pretends Bernie doesn't go on TYT because he's sort of afraid that they're so radical, like they're gonna ask him something that's so radical. I mean, it's cute that he's, you know, sort of trying to push that line, but I have noticed something, and the two of you may not be as tuned in on what Cenk, the latest thing Cenk Uygur have said, or the latest happenings of Cenk, but I have noticed that he has, ever since some of the things that has happened with Anna has come out, the last 2 or 3 weeks, their clips, he is trying to appear more forceful, more radical to the left. Ever since sort of the things that's been happening with Anna, and they've been called out as moving to the right. And I think an article in one of the newspapers, I can't remember who it was, Current Affair, it wasn't Jacobin. They were talking about how TYT has moved to the right, but ever since then, he's been trying to make it a point to appear or use more like radical sounding language that he has not been using lately. And so I added that part. So let's let it finish, and then I'll get your comments on the entire video, and we'll move to the final topic.
thing is, okay, they lost on COVID relief bill, but Chuck Schumer said something unprecedented. And he said it to The Intercept. The article's public, you could all see it. Ryan Grimm interviewed him, and Chuck Schumer said, I will put $15 minimum wage in every bill going forward. That's a golden opportunity, golden. That's when progressives should step up and go.
Is that a golden opportunity? Or are they just taking an opportunity knowing that any bill that involves money has to come out of the House, and the House is ran by the GOP? You notice, so maybe I am right in my analysis of TYT appearing more radical. It could be it coincides with the same reason why some elected Democrats are more radical sounding and doing more bills. It's because the House is ran by the Republicans and they know nothing is actually going to happen. So it's that. But let me let it play. I know I keep stopping it and saying I'm going to let it play, but this time I'll let it finish out a full minute, no stops.
Go, I agree with Chuck Schumer. It should go in every bill going forward, and we're not going to vote for any of these bills unless it's got $15 minimum wage, and we have our beautiful ally Chuck Schumer with us. Now, why did Chuck Schumer do that? Because he was worried that AOC was going to run against him in that Senate seat. But they took that power and leverage and they flushed it down the toilet. Not one progressive asked Chuck Schumer to ever put it in a bill again. That's a negligence and dereliction of duty beyond imagination. It breaks my heart to tell you that, but that's what happened. These guys, they don't know politics at all. So it's just incredibly dispiriting to see this happen. But by the way, to Bernie and to the Justice Democrats, I know you mean well. I'm not questioning your intent at all. So prove us wrong. Fight for these. The wealth tax is very, very difficult, but the minimum wage is incredibly popular. All you have to do is fight. Prove us wrong, fight. But my guess is Anna's right, you won't, it's just marketing.
This has been reaction to a lot of some of the things that Bernie had been saying. He's been putting out videos that he's doing this and he's doing that. And I mean, so TYT and Cenk sort of have the same critique, like, prove it. Like, what are you going to do? Are you going to fight? So there's a lot else said in that segment. I'll start with Michelle and then go to Anthony. This is a shorter segment, so I know your analysis may not be as long. So, but whatever you have to contribute, what do you have to give, or what do you not to give to say about Cenk's critique of Bernie, and maybe also how, just like Democrats, TYT appears to be more radical talking when there's split power and Democrats aren't in power in the House. So any and all of that you can talk about or part of it. Michelle, what's your analysis of that?
I agree with you in saying that they're being more radical because they can get away with being more radical. But the part that is more interesting to me is, why are they being more radical? You know, because we live in a country of haves and have-nots. You know, those people that have the resource that don't have to worry about those that don't have the resource. And when he's talking about $15 an hour minimum wage, that's not sustainable anymore anyways, because most states you need at least a $20 to $22 an hour minimum wage in order for us to even barely eke by and survive. And you can bet as soon as we put more money into the ownership class, the people that own everything around us, the businesses, everything else, that they'll raise our rents again to make it more than that again, until we have the controls that keep things affordable and ensure that we have, as human beings, we have a right to housing, a right to healthcare, a right to food on our table, a right to healthy food in our country, you know? So it goes back to also that rubber band of comfort. You know, you can dabble and be slightly uncomfortable when it's safe to be uncomfortable. You know, so you can go into this cause of, we need more money for the base workers, while they're also stripping away worker rights. We've got more child labor issues going on in our country today than we've had in I don't know how many years. We've got more, we still have sub-minimum wage for disabled people, which allows them to pay people pennies an hour, as long as they're being supported by some nonprofit that's getting the rest of the money, you know? So all of these policies and processes facilitate people being toxic. And you know, toxic can be, I'll play this part today, I'll put this role on because it's safe today to put this role on, and tomorrow I'll walk away from it when somebody else gets elected, or somebody decides not to endorse me when I'm running for office, and now I want to be their you know, shadow and say all that they're doing is wrong, you know. So
absolutely. And also, if you want to also attack that briefly, Professor, your thoughts on this. I don't know if I've seen a tweet from you on this topic, but even if you didn't, what is your reaction to the critique of Bernie Sanders in this, and then also the pointing out the analysis of them being a little more radical now that there's split power with the GOP controlling the House? Go ahead, Professor.
Yeah, I think that's on the money, that they're able to say more things, and so is Chuck Schumer and all those people, because the House isn't going to pass any of this stuff onto the Senate in the first place. But, you know, look, Cenk is not a dumb guy. He reads the mood, and he realizes his brand matters a lot to him. So he needs to appear, now that a lot of leftists are critiquing Bernie, he needs to appear like he's doing it too. But he waits till it's safe. I think Cenk is a charlatan. I don't believe he believes anything he says. I just think he's full of crap. And he's an opportunist. So there's no, like, I don't feel that, like, I don't watch TYT anymore. I don't get educated from it. It's just they're kind of propping themselves up, and they want to look like they're at the vanguard of radical politics, and they are not. And, like, just let's remember, the $15 wage was in the reconciliation bill. Schumer took it out because the parliamentarian told them, this is not something that is eligible for reconciliation. They could have ignored it, and they could have had the 50-50 vote, and Harris could have been the tiebreaker. Here's how we know, but that never happened. And then Bernie did his little performance. There was a vote, but of course it went down. 8 Democrats, by the way, voted against the $15 wage when it was taken out of the reconciliation bill. Not just Manson and Sinema. 8 Democrats in the Senate. So I don't want to hear like, oh, it was just 1 or 2 people. No, a good portion of that party doesn't give a shit that millions of Americans are suffering profoundly because of this unequal distribution of wealth and resources. And, you know, the last indication of knowing that Cenk is not seriously a leftist is the fact that he even talks about a $15 wage, as Michelle was saying before. Like, that was 10 years ago that we were demanding it. I was marching in Burger Kings and McDonald's in Brooklyn. We went in there, we would do these pop-up little demonstrations, and we would be like, pay your workers a living wage, and we would go out. And that was in 2014 and 2015. It's 2023. So the bottom line federally needs to be 25. We probably need to ask for 30 to get the 25, and it's got to be immediate. But that's how I know that Cenk is not serious, because he thinks 15 is still like a thing. It's not. Let's, you know, I would just recommend people not watch TYT. It's just not, you will learn nothing.
And like it. All right, so let's move to the final subject. We're gonna have to punt one of our topics to the next, because we're just going a lot further than longer than we wanted to. But I do have this broad question, and then we can play the clip and get your answer. I'll give you the question first, though, and that is, why do you think, or it's my opinion, that the reason we're hearing more and more, not this topic, this other one, the one we're going to punt to another day is going to be the Woody Harrelson story with RFK. So we're going to tackle the Biden. I think Biden's getting replaced. To me, that's the only explanation for why they're allowing, and I'm saying they as in the ruling class, in donor class, is allowing coverage of the question of Biden being replaced. I don't at all think this guy, Dean Phillips, is going out on his own, some rogue guy going out on different networks talking about how we need more people in the primaries. He's part of a coordinated attempt to message a certain thing. Maybe they're getting ready to pivot to Gavin Newsom. Everybody knows Gavin Newsom is running a parallel campaign right now. Gavin Newsom is going around and he's running a parallel campaign right now. So Gavin Newsom and the governor of Michigan, Whitmer, could be a perfect 1-2 punch, a perfect ticket for the Democratic Party to pivot to away from Joe Biden and Kamala Harris. So we got maybe 8 minutes left. We need to try to get out of here. So I'm going to play it and then get your quick reaction, and then we'll get out of here, everybody. So let's play it, and then I'll play about 2 minutes, and then I'll get your reaction.
And I'm concerned about the Democratic establishment working much too hard to prevent any new entrants, to prevent competition, instead pursuing a coronation. And frankly, we did something similar in 2008. And thank goodness, a first-term senator from the state of Illinois raised his hand, stood up, met the moment, and we had Barack Obama become United States president. I just think that we should be mindful of history, recognize the consequences of not having a backup plan, Jake, because one of the core elements of successful leadership is a succession plan, being sure that there's somebody able, ready to go. And I'd like to see the president actually invite people to the primary stage. And again, not me. You know, I'm a third-term congressman from Minnesota. I think I'm able and prepared for the job, but I'm a third-term congressman. I have 60,000 Twitter followers and $250,000 in my campaign account. There are people ready to go, governors. And
so the credentials he just gave are the same credentials, I would say, why this is not some rogue guy. The guy with his credentials, why is CNN even having him on then? Why did Make the Press have him on? The guy has 65,000 followers by his own admission and $250,000 in his campaign fund. He's a nobody in their eyes. So why is he being allowed to go on these networks to say these things? Keep that in mind. You're going to answer that question once we finish this another minute of this clip.
in particular moderate governors from the heartland, that I think, I'll tell you what, Jake, I've been someone who always reaches out to people before I talk about them. And sadly, some have asked that I not even reference their names right now, which is a pretty good indicator of how this establishment blocks, prevents, and silences people. And I'm here to speak. I think I'm the only one. I think I'm the only member of the Congress, a Democrat, out of 262 people, giving voice to the majority of Democratic voters in the country, and those 80% of independents who are saying the exact same thing. That's my job. And that's what I'm going to continue to do.
Doing the math, and I'm doing this on the fly, so correct me if I'm wrong, but I can only think of 2 Democratic governors from the heartland who are women, one of whom is from Kansas and one of whom is from Michigan. Are you suggesting that one of them, specifically, I'm just to take a leap here, Gretchen Whitmer from Michigan, is somebody you would like to see throw her hat into the ring?
I think there are about 5 names. Everybody watching right now probably knows who they are. They're on the bench. They've got organization. They would have institutional support. They have access to the extraordinary amount of money, resources necessary to mount a credible primary campaign.
You see, who is he talking to? And I can stop here and get your comment. He's not talking to us. He's talking to donors. He's talking to the people they're trying to convince we need to move on from Joe Biden. This is my opinion. Now I want to get your opinion. Let's start with Anthony, then we'll go to Michelle. We'll keep it brief just for the sake of time. But what is your explanation for why they're now saying this is becoming more prevalent, that they're allowing to say this on mainstream or cable news networks, corporate media, in print and on TV? Why are they doing this more often? Do you think Joe Biden will be replaced? And if not, why do you think? What is the other reason you think? Go ahead, Anthony.
Well, I mean, it's my understanding that he would not be allowed as a Democrat representative in Congress to be on CNN without their okay.
Right.
Yeah, you can't just be rogue. If you do that, you lose support of the DNC, and good luck next time running for office, right? Because they're just they don't like that, right? So they tell them who can go on and who can't. I did a thread on this, I don't know, two or 3 weeks ago. I don't believe Joe Biden is going to be the nominee in 2024. I just do not. The man is not well, physically or cognitively. He's just not. In addition to being wildly unpopular and having the lowest approval ratings of any first-term president at this term in his presidency since Jimmy Carter. There's no way he's going to be the nominee. I find it hysterical that nobody's talking about Kamala Harris. It makes me happy because she is a living piece of shit.
Yeah, she's terrible.
I mean, I could just say 2 things. What she did to incarcerated people in California, kept them in prison after courts ordered her to depopulate the prisons because they were overcrowded, because she needed the free labor. All those people who think that Democrats are good on queer issues, they are not. Kamala Harris refused to allow trans women in prison in California to transition or be on hormone therapy. She put them in with men and they got raped. So she's good on nothing, and she abandoned sex abuse survivors who were abused by clergy members. And since I'm a survivor of clergy abuse, that there's a whole bunch of reasons, but I find it hysterical that Kamala Harris is not being.
She's terrible.
So, but they have a problem, and I said this in my thread. What are you going to do now? Because if Biden has to drop out because of health, and I don't think that would be a made-up thing, like literally he's not well, and he's not going to get better. Look at the actuarials. Insurance companies know this. He's just not getting better, and he's older than his 80 years, by far. Look at Bernie. Bernie's a year older than him, and Bernie's like running around and, politics aside. Joe Biden, they have a problem, the Democrats do. Because what are you going to pass over Kamala Harris? If Joe Biden has to step aside, Kamala becomes president. You don't run your party's president. So that is going to be a problem. There are a lot of people who support Kamala Harris and like the fact that she's a woman of color. Now, what are you going to do to them? Those voters believed hook, line, and sinker that the Democrats cared about diversity. Now you're passing over Kamala Harris. for a white guy with a nice head of hair. And by God, Gavin Newsom has excellent hair. He looks like if you had to like come up with an AI president, that guy, he's a good looking guy, right? But what are you going to pass over Kamala Harris for Gavin Newsom? How is that going to go over? And what?
Yeah.
And now does he pick a white? See, the Democrats have pigeonholed themselves with identity politics. So I just think they're completely fucked right now. I really do. The only hope they have is that Trump, gets just so dirty and muddled from all of his cases that people hold their nose and vote for whatever Democrat. But I don't think it's going to go well for them. I really don't. And that's, again, why I think Cornell West has a perfect opportunity to show what clowns they are.
That is the point that, I mean, I couldn't have said it better myself. I wholeheartedly agree with that, especially that last part. And we'll go to Michelle for final comments on this, and really final comments of the stream before we read super chat. So what are your comments on same sort of thing? Do you think Joe Biden is going to be replaced? If you don't think so, you can further comment on that, and if you do, comment on that. And what say you about why we're hearing this more often in corporate owned media about this idea of the possibility?
I think what I've even experienced myself as when I don't have a lot of time or energy to focus on politics is to realize that there's a long plan that's already in place. There are a lot of backroom discussions that are planning out these things like a freaking strategic chess match. There's a lot of framing and propaganda and support that gets given to keep people like trailing along with them so that they're doing what they want them to do and not necessarily what the rest of the population wants them to do. And you're correct. It's been circulating since I think since Biden was elected that they're not going to run Biden in the second 4 years. But
right.
Biden hasn't completely. I mean, Biden's not well. I'll agree with that. And it's a struggle for me to find the balance point with these super old elected people that have need to just go home and take care of themselves. Need to just go home and live out the rest of their life in a comfortable place while battling with saying that with the institutionalized ableism that does exist that harms people on a regular, in the process. So it's important that we realize there's deeper conversations, deeper agendas, deeper freaking billionaires that are steering the boat in certain situations, big corporations, big industries that are making these decisions, and they're just letting the parties that rely on their funding stream to move the pieces in the way that's most strategic to get their agenda ahead. We need to see that for the truth that it is. We need to stop just being spoon-fed. This is your candidate. This is our choice. This is who we're endorsing. You're supporting it with your pseudo vote, but yet that vote doesn't represent a lot of people that don't vote because they're so disenfranchised and so disconnected, and they really feel powerless and they're just trying to survive. We need to, while doing all of this, my father is a Republican. He was a Trump supporter. He has since kind of realized some of the wrong in those things. But throughout the pandemic, I dealt with struggles with that belief structure while also seeing and realizing as a person from a lower income area in northern Michigan, a very suppressed, not very dynamic funded area, those hardships are felt in a way different from what we experience here in California, from what we experience in other places. When you don't have big industry around you, all you have is kind of to blame the person next to you for needing more than you do and forgetting that because their need is greater. So it's a lot of psychology, a lot of human relations, sociology comes into play too in kind of figuring all of this out. And we've got to quit being spoon-fed and start realizing that when something doesn't feel right, there's a reason it doesn't feel right. And even if everybody else is saying don't pursue that, reach out to somebody different and say, hey, why did you say this? Or hey, why didn't you say this? You know, and together we can hopefully brainstorm a better tomorrow.
Absolutely. Thank you for those final comments, and thank to you both for joining me today. And I'm gonna give you 30 seconds each to kind of shout out what's coming up next for you, if anything, or any advocacy you want to shout out. I'll go to Professor first, 30 seconds, and then I'll go to Michelle, 30 seconds. Professor, what's going on with you? What can people expect, or do you have any actions to shout out? Go ahead, sir. Oh,
You're
hold on.
muted.
You're muted. Okay. There you go.
Why do I keep doing that? I just have to say, you got to bum rush the show and go for what you know and fight the powers that be. And I seriously, like, I'm turning to old school hip hop now to make me realize that there is a consciousness that has been brewing for a while. Listen, I'm all the places people know. I always like to leave with this like positive piece. The consciousness that we are in this moment has been building for a long time. Do not get discouraged that we don't get everything right away. I'm not talking about incrementalism. I'm talking about upending the system. Everything along the path that's happened until now brought us here to a Cornell West candidacy, to people being more awake. There's a lot of good things going on. So just like, let's keep the conversations going. Ignore the trolls because they are paid to distract you. And do something good for yourself today. Activism is hard work. I don't know. Do something that makes yourself happy.
Yeah, and I'm gonna be. I guess this makes me happy hanging out with my family. Really doing some school shopping right after this, so that should be interesting. I'm not gonna say fun; it'll be interesting. But same for you, Michelle. 30 seconds to sum up. What do you got going on? Any activism you want to shout out, or anything else you want to bring attention to?
I'll bring attention to Crip the Vote, which is hashtag Crip the Vote, which kind of goes back to something Professor Cenk brought up early on about disabled people. Remember that disabled people, we are the canaries in the coal mine. We see things because we experience hardship in ways that other people may not. Just like we don't experience all hardships, though, we do see the ones we do. Give us a keen eye to some of the realities of the world that may be different from your reality or my reality or somebody else's reality. You know, we need each other, and I'm not going to push. People can find me on Twitter via my handle that's on the screen. There are other places via Twitter you can link to after you find me on Twitter to find my other things that I'm working on and stuff. But mostly just be nice to each other and start to have conversations and connect. Talk with the person that makes you uncomfortable to start to ask those questions of why and figure out what the untruths are. Because we have a vocal minority today, and we need to listen to those of us that don't have the time or energy to actually push our voices forward. And support
That is
our
so very important. No, that is so very important. Just because people that may not have the time, energy, or abilities to be out here doesn't mean they're not. They don't agree. It just could be something else is keeping them out of the fight. So again, thank you both. I'm going to drop you both in the back until the end. I mean, you can stick around if you like, or if you want. I'm just going to shout out a couple of things before we go. For example, I got to do a couple of super chats. I guess I can pop this in the screen as a closeout video. Do a couple of super. Actually, I'll play this in the background. All right, so I'm gonna skirt through the super chats fairly quickly here. Okay, there we go. I had a short glitch here. All right, so it looks like we got 12 super chats. I'm gonna start at the bottom. Now, I put a lot of these up already, but I didn't read them, so this is my opportunity to read them really quickly here. If they pop up faster. I'll read them off of my other screen. Okay, so it's on. All right, so I have changed my politics and will now center it around the feeling of an enormous Caucasian disabled woman and pretend like we have to go along. I'm not understanding that one, but thank you for the super chat anyway. And here's another one by Rick. And the first one was by Rick. I am not and never will be a fascist. That is Rick. Thank you for the super chat. This one, no, another one by Rick. So Rick has been active today. So another one by Rick. There's no captain that can save them anymore, CJ. Thank you, Rick. And here is one from Instacares. Greens are pro-Ukraine, like Dems voting RFK. That's just Howie Long, because the Jill Stein of Jammu Baraka, who are also Greens, they're anti. So it just depends who you're referring to. Here goes Rick, another one. Let's be real. This lady is crazy, and that is crazy. AOC is crazy. I think that's when that comment came through. And then this one here. Obama was a Ivy League academic. I support Cornell West because he understands the failures of that class. And that is that one. Rick, again, I'm for Cornell West in 2024. And then here is another one. Oh, this is the last one. All right. So wish I could stick around, but someone should ask what SPF will protect Palestinians from rarely missiles. I'm sorry. From isn't rarely missiles. Okay. I'm not sure I understand, but thank you for the super chat regardless. And we are going to be exiting out. I decided to do this stream so that we can have a live stream every day. We've had one Monday. We had one Tuesday, Wednesday. Nick and I, we had a great day on Wednesday. Thursday, Sabby and JB show. Friday, Sabby show. Today, me. Tomorrow, JB. Then we're back with the post-duopoly show. So the post-duopoly show will be at money. Just trying to make sure we have a live stream for all of our audience every single day. That's why I decided to come on. I was not supposed to come on today. So now I'm off to school shopping for my little one who starts school next week. So here is that AOC video just to remind us of the ridiculousness of it all. Here we go.
We are here to talk about sunscreen, specifically U.S. sunscreen, and how to fix it. Hello, everyone. This is Rep AOC, and I'm here with Charlotte Palomino.
I'm a brand owner, but also a licensed esthetician. U.S. sunscreen regulations are not necessarily making us more safe or better products.
U.S. sunscreens are far behind the rest of the world. I was in South Korea earlier this year, and it is so clear how far advanced the rest of the world is on sunscreen, and we deserve better here in the US.
How does the FDA regulate?
FDA is different than the rest of the world in that we regulate sunscreen as a drug instead of a cosmetic. It's regulated as a drug, has far more stringent standards, far more testing, far more scientific and clinical trials that are required, which is good. We want to make sure that things are safe. However, sometimes that can add a lot of bureaucratic and costs that prevent us from getting any sunscreen filters at all.
And just for context, it has been since 1999. It was the last time that we had a new sunscreen filter in the United States.
When we compare the US standards to European standards in 2017, a Sloan Kettering study found that only half of US sunscreens met European protection standards. Here's the thing though, there is something that we can do about this. Congress has not been very aware of this issue, which is why there hasn't been a lot of momentum behind this issue. Truly, it's not too corny. Please contact your member of Congress, especially if your member of Congress sits on the Energy and Commerce Committee. They have jurisdiction over the FDA. However, any member of Congress can develop attention and draw attention to this issue, ask them to break through some of the regulatory barriers at the FDA and fund public research so that we can all enjoy the filters that develop out of the scientific process.
Just need to make some noise about it.
Totally. I mean, I love Korean sunscreens, but I want to buy this in the US. Why do we need to import them from all over the place?